In Emperor Kuen's imperial harem, there are in excess of 30 concubines with named titles, and there are in excess of 10 princes on the genealogical record. As for princesses, there are even more. Inshuo sat at the desk with a tall mountain of books and scrolls. Upon careful examination, they were all records on Western Kuen's national situation. He wrote down the names of the concubines of each palace and the names of the princes that they gave birth to, matching them to each other one by one. Regardless of which country, none of them had any habit of revealing detailed accounts of their princesses to the outside world for fear of costing the girls their image. The people of Northernly did not seem to care about this, as their princesses and princes were raised in the same way, but Northernly's imperial family kept very few records. Those on the outside knew very little. Inshuo furrowed his brow. The more he wrote, the more messy things became. All right, you won't be able to find out Yu Fu's identity relying on this alone. Yin Yen brought out an official report from a bookshelf, and Inshuo raised his head to take a look. He then immediately knew that it was a report written to Emperor Ning by one of the officials in court. Yin Yan had made a habit of collecting these reports so that he could look through them at any time. Inshuo's conjecture regarding Yu Fu caused him to recall something. Take a look, this is a report that Gu Huaijiang submitted to His Majesty a couple of months ago. In it, he mentions that Western Kuen employed some underhanded tactics for the sake of attacking Eastern Ling. They even made use of poison. He suggested to His Majesty that we also learn from Western Kuen and send learned children to Immortals Valley to learn about medicine and poisons. Sun remembers that. His Majesty accepted Marquis Gu's suggestions, but there were quite a few high-ranking officials unwilling to have their children suffer this hardship. Truly carrying it out has been sluggish. Yin Yen mockingly smiled. At that time, Father felt that something was off. Today, I've come to a realization after putting that together with what you said. If Yu Fu is a princess from Western Kuen, it's extremely likely that Emperor Kuen has given her over as a hostage to have him continue his work for Western Kuen. There's also that Kuen Wushang. Who knows if Gu Huaijiang tying him up and sending him before His Majesty isn't just some ruse that was planned beforehand. Inshuo paused for a moment and thought back to his glimpse through the crack in the window of the study. If it was a ruse, this play was a little too realistic. If it was not, Yu Fu's identity would truly be too hard to explain. Princess Danyang was Eastern Ling's princess born of the Empress, which made her the top-ranking princess. To be able to compare with her, who else could she be aside from a princess of Western Kuen? Father, is there a chance that the maidservant remembered incorrectly? Or perhaps it was just something that Yu Fu's maidservant deliberately said while angry to provoke her. Giving a dignified princess of Western Kuen to Marquis Gu to act as his adopted daughter, that's a little too exaggerated for effect. If she isn't a princess from Western Kuen, why does Gu Huaijiang dote on her so much? Also, why does Kuen Wushang do so much to protect her? She is so young, so how else could she have become so skilled at the zither? Thinking then to her actions during the imperial banquet, she appeared magnanimous and dignified. She was unlike a normal young miss from a noble household. All signs pointed to her being a princess from Western Kuen. Inshuo pursed his lips, then took another look at the family relations of Western Kuen's imperial family to try and find where Yu Fu might fit in. Western Kuen had over 20 princesses, but there was never any indication of one being sent to Immortals Valley, nor were there any signs of one missing from the imperial palace. She was 12 years old this year. Of course, it was also possible that she was 11 or 13. One who was previously 11 to 13, which one of Emperor Kuen's concubines could have given birth to her? Or perhaps, which palace maid or something? Sure, send all of the people that were dispatched to Immortals Valley to Western Kuen. As long as we can confirm that Yu Fu is a princess from Western Kuen, Gu Huaijiang will be completely unable to provide an explanation. Emperor Ning was already uncomfortable with Kun Wushang simply going to visit Marquis Gu's manor. What more could happen if he found out that he had taken in and adopted a princess from Western Kun? Yin Yan was in a great mood and patted him on the shoulder. You keep investigating here. In the future, you can enter the study freely. There's no need to ask father anymore. Remember, you must quickly find out Yu Fu's identity. After saying this, he stopped paying attention to Yin Shuo's expression and directly exited the study. Yin Shuo respectfully bowed in a salute and only stood up straight when he could no longer hear Yin Yan's footsteps. Kun Wushang openly entered the study in Marquis Gu's manor, yet His Majesty still did nothing to him. It seems that he has firmly decided to not engage in battle with Western Kun. Even if you really are a princess from Western Kun, His Majesty would not truly do anything. He muttered to himself and sat back down at the desk. Picking up his brush once more, he continued to make calculations on the paper. Western Kun's Empress. The Crown Prince's birth mother, with her status as the country's mother, if she secretly gave birth to a princess, it definitely would not remain hidden. Dipping his brush in ink, he crossed out the words Empress Kun. Continuing down, Beauty Zheng. Kun Wushang's birth mother. No matter how one looked, he and Yu Fu did not look like siblings born from the same mother. Siblings born from the same parents would always have some similarities, no matter how different they looked. Kun Wushang's sharp and handsome features were distinctive. Standing tall and mightily, he had the unruliness and might found in men from Western Kun. Yu Fu's beauty was not like a firework that stood out among people. She was refined and elegant like someone from an elegant place. The two of them were not at all alike. It was just like how he and Yin Jiao shared no similarities. Yin Shuo lifted his brush and froze for a moment, only bringing it back down after a long pause. The words Beauty Zheng were also crossed out in black ink. Yu Fu had both of her hands stuck inside a pouch made of snow-white fox fur and had an extra purple cloak draped around her, as she stood on a stool in the corridor. Even with the sky getting darker and darker, her eldest brother still had not come. Young miss, it's getting windy outside. How about young miss goes inside to wait? Yaolong came outside to give her a different hand warmer. The coal inside the previous one was almost burned out, yet Yu Fu continued to hold on to it without realizing it. I will wait a little longer. Who knows, eldest brother might come in a moment. He had told her to wait for his return. Standing in the hall, she would be able to see his return just a moment sooner. If she waited inside the room, she would just feel more anxious. It will start snowing soon. Did young miss not notice the sky getting darker and darker? Yaolong pointed toward the sky where a number of gray clouds were bearing down. It looked rather dirty. Just as she said this, white snowflakes began to flutter down. Yu Fu leaped with joy. This is the year's first snow. The first snow of the year came on the head general's birthday. This is a good omen. She pulled her hands out of the pouch and brought them together, silently reciting a prayer. It was to pray for the head general's good health and that he would be able to return from every battle in triumph. It's snowing. Is young miss still outside? Lian Bai's voice came from inside the room. Fearing that she would come out to hurry her inside, she picked up her pouch and ran away. Yaolong, tell Lian Bai and the others that I will go out for a bit then immediately come back. Young miss, wait for me to go with you. Yaolong wanted to follow her but was worried that Lian Bai and the others would get worried if they could not find them. She hesitated for a moment but still went back inside to tell Lian Bai. She then lifted the curtain and went back out, but where was there any sign of Yu Fu? A flurry of snow had quickly covered the entirety of Marquis Gu's manor, turning it into a sea of white. Yu Fu had gone out in a hurry and did not change into sheepskin boots to deal with the snow. Her feet were currently freezing, and she could only stomp her feet to try and regain some feeling in them. At this time, eldest brother would either be in the front hall or in the study. She thought for a moment, then headed in the direction of the front hall. There was a thin layer of snow on the cobblestone path. Yu-Fu raised her foot and tested it, leaving a shallow imprint in the snow. The snow was not deep, but it was enough to completely cover her foot. If she went this way, her feet would definitely get extremely cold. She covered herself tightly with the cloak's hood, even hiding her small face under the hood. With her head down, she advanced. Snowflakes landed on her head and shoulders. The purple and white contrasting with one another looked particularly nice. After just a couple of steps, she began to sway. This was bad. Normally, these cobblestones were not slippery, but on a snowy day, it became harder to walk. She spread her arms to maintain her balance, and the wind began to blow into her cloak. She had no time to notice the cold and tried to walk along the edge of the cobblestone path. The edge of the path was paved with limestone. It was both flat and prevented slips. Walking on it ensured that she would not fall. Unfortunately, her legs were not long enough. Just as she was about to reach the limestone, her body swayed, and her entire body fell back. A gentle laugh came from behind her, as someone grabbed a hold of her, allowing her to fall into their embrace. In the blustery field of white, two purple figures were merged together. It was impossible to tell whose clothes were caught on whose. Yu-Fu struggled to prop herself up on his chest. Only then did she notice that Gu Shubai had been caught beneath her. Eldest brother. This was her first time seeing Gu Shubai in such a sorry state. He had been pushed down in the snow and had a hand on his chest to cope with the pain. Yu-Fu looked at her snow-covered hand. He was covering the hand that she used to prop herself up. Didn't we agree that you would wait for me? She really was naughty, running out on her own on a snowy day. I was waiting for you. I was standing in the corridor and waiting. But it suddenly started snowing, and Sister Lian Bai and the others were definitely going to hurry me inside, so I decided to run out on my own to look for you. Just waiting around was not in her personality. If Gu Shubai had some matter that he had to take care of, she could also go and visit him. You aren't hurt from the fall, right? Yu-Fu looked up and dusted off some of the snow on his clothes. Gu Shubai lifted his cloak, bringing it above her head and making it momentarily dark. Don't stay here in the snow. Let's go and speak in the corridor. Your body is covered in snowflakes, yet you have the mind to worry about me. Why are your shoes wet too? He had Yu-Fu sit on a bench in the corridor and thought to himself that if he had not seen her slip, how could he be willing to throw himself behind her at the cost of his image in her eyes? Looking from top to bottom, he finally noticed that her shoes were soaked from the snow, causing large patches of the light purple shoes to turn dark purple. When I came out, I forgot to change my shoes. It had not yet snowed this year, so the newly made sheepskin boots probably haven't been brought out yet. Gu Shubai slightly furrowed his brow. You've fallen into a river. An imperial physician's son has stated that you must not catch a cold. If she fell ill once more, Gu Huaijiang would definitely feel guilty once more, saying that he did not know how to take care of a daughter. Is the inside wet? Yu-Fu wiggled her toes and felt around a bit. It seems that it's a bit wet. These cloth shoes were indeed pretty, but it was just a little too thin. Both snow and water had seeped in. Gu Shubai reached out to remove the shoes. With a few moves, the wet shoes and socks had all been removed, and her feet had been stuffed into his cloak. I'll bring you back first to get changed into a dry set of clothes. Picking her up horizontally, the tiny person fully fit under his large cloak and looked up at him foolishly. Meeting up with them were Lian Bai and the others. They had come out to look for them under their umbrellas. Upon seeing this sight, they could not help but freeze in their tracks. Your young Miss Shoes and Socks are in the back corridor. Gu Shubai gestured with his chin and hastily headed toward the western wing. Yu Fu's socks and shoes were placed on a drying rack near the brazier. Yaolong felt them and found that they were warm and toasty, thus she removed them to put them on Yu Fu. She had removed the cloak because it was warm inside the room, and there was no need for a pouch or hand warmer. She then dexterously ran out to see Gu Shubai. He was presently drinking tea while seated on a sofa in the outer room. Seeing Yu Fu look at him from the door but not come over for a long time, he waved to her. What are you standing there for? Are there flowers on my face? There aren't. Not only were there no flowers, but it looked a little strict. Yu Fu stood timidly before him but did not sit down on the sofa. She looked like a child who had done something wrong and was being punished by her teacher. He raised his head and looked around. Lian Bai and the others understandingly retreated. Yu Fu's small head hung low, as she stared at her feet. Do you know what I want to say to you? I do. Yu Fu counted on her fingers, listen to instructions, wait when told to wait, and don't go mindlessly running around. When it snows, it's even more important to not carelessly go outside. I must change my shoes, take an umbrella, bring others with me, and I must not catch a cold. She was clearly organized and recalling each and every point. She was able to remember it but did not do it. Gu Shubai endured for a while but could not stop the corners of his lips from curling up. Unfortunately, Yu Fu currently had her head down while counting on her fingers, thus she did not see his expression. Eldest brother, I know that what I did was wrong. Don't be mad, all right? She had not done it on purpose. I am mad, but it's not because of this. Gu Shubai very rarely spoke to her with a serious expression. If it was not for this, then what was the reason? Before she could figure it out, Gu Shubai picked her up and placed her on the sofa. The warmth was so comfortable that she did not want to move. The floor is cold. You can take your time to think about it while sitting. Sitting cross-legged, Yu Fu casually pulled over a pillow and began mindlessly fiddling with it. Aside from her running out earlier, she did not seem to have done anything wrong, right? Gu Shubai's gaze landed on her hands. Her tender white fingers tugged at the pillow in her lap from time to time. The sight of this made him recall things in quick succession. He averted his gaze in an unnatural manner. Father arranged for you and me to be engaged. Why did you refuse? Ha! Yu Fu had an innocent expression. When did I refuse? I was saying that, master. She was all too eager for such a day to come. When she mistakenly believed that Madame Su said that she had arranged a marriage for her and Su Yunyan, her mind was racing with all kinds of thoughts. This included the head general forcefully taking Gu Shubai back. All of these thoughts had been considered. Who knew that, in an unexpected joyous situation, Madame Su and Gu Huaijiang would actually reveal that it would be her and Gu Shubai. At that moment she was already extremely happy, but she could not express it in front of outsiders. She could only smile foolishly. But why did he say that she had refused the engagement? Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? His finger was hooked under her chin. With a slight pull, her large and ignorant eyes flickered. He suddenly forgot what he was about to say, and his mind momentarily went blank. It seemed that she was telling the truth and really did not know. Gu Shubai gently explained, Father announced that he wished to engage us in front of every noble family in the capital. If you did not refuse, you and I could have exchanged keepsakes on the spot. With Father and Auntie taking responsibility for the decision, and the guests acting as witnesses, this matter would have been set. But when Father asked if you wanted to or not, you said that the deity of medicine had not yet agreed. Our Eastern Ling is a country of etiquette. With you mentioning the deity of medicine, Father could only express that take responsibility as my father and could not take responsibility for you. So it was like this. Yu Fu wanted to cry but had no tears. I didn't know that your Easternling's rules were like that. Then let me quickly write a letter to Master to have him quickly agree to our engagement. Won't it be considered set just like that? Once these words came out, she quickly covered her mouth. Gu Shubai was smiling a little too brightly. She realized a little too late, but what sort of things had she just said? No good, too utterly shameless. Now eldest brother would definitely laugh at her. When she spoke in front of outsiders, she always had a sense of decorum, but for some reason, she would always make mistakes when speaking to Gu Shubai. If you don't like me, I will act as if I never heard it. He grabbed a hold of her hand, wanting to have her with him without ever worrying about saying the wrong thing. As long as he confirmed her feelings, nothing else mattered. Yu Fu quietly said, although it hasn't been confirmed, eldest brother can't like anyone else. Especially Princess Danyang, you can't like her. She was very certain that as long as Gu Shubai showed even the faintest interest in Princess Danyang, he would never be able to get away. This was because Princess Danyang also really liked him. Gu Shubai was taken aback, but his smile could not be concealed. This matter. It seems that I should be the one to worry, right? At his side, there would be one Princess Danyang, at most. As for Yu Fu's side. Just in this manner alone, there were dangers lurking all over. It did not allow for even the slightest bit of relaxation. Who is eldest brother worried about? Yu Fu looked puzzled. It was likely because there were too many people at her side who treated her well, thus she still could not tell for certain who liked her like a little sister and who had special feelings for her. Aside from the way Gu Shubai liked her, she did not mind how other people liked her. I'm not worried, and there's no need for you to worry. Those other men who got close to Yu Fu, he would sort them out one by one. Outside the window, the snow blew all over, as the north wind roared. Yu Fu infatuatedly gazed at his profile. Suddenly realizing what he meant, her eyes became crescents from her smile. The heavy snow continued for 2 days, and the entirety of Marquis Gu's manor was completely blanketed in a layer of snow. It was really pretty. A man with a cloak of silk and crane feathers walked slowly on the snow-covered ground. Behind him was a line of tidy footprints. His head was slightly lowered, as he seemed to be thinking about something. He did not even notice when a nearby pine tree shook. Behind the pine were 4 people squeezed together with snowballs in hand. When he gets here, throw them at him. Throw them at his face. Gu Yi directed everyone with the air of a general. 6th brother, this isn't good, right? There are 4 of us. 4 snowballs thrown at a single person's face would definitely make his face really cold. Especially. Yu Fu glanced at the snowball in Gu Yi's hands. It had been firmly packed and was even a little larger than her head. Would this really not cause a nosebleed? Gu Xiang was full of youthful vigor, and the snowball in his hands was also not small. Su Yunyan's could be considered the smallest, but it was also the size of her palm. Yu Fu thought for a moment and picked up a handful of snow from the ground. She would just do this and make do. Su Yunyan said with disdain, Yu Fu, that's much too little. It will scatter upon throwing it out. It's too lacking in spirit. Saying this, she hefted the snowball in her hand, then compared it to the ones that Gu Xiang and Gu Yi had. Feeling that it was a little lacking, she added a bit more snow. Yu Fu said, this isn't good, right? That's 4th brother. Gu Wenqing, among all of the brothers, was the one who treated his younger brothers and sisters the kindest. It's because it's 4th brother that we can do this. Would you dare to try this on 3rd brother? Gu Xiang drew his finger across his neck, he would definitely use his sword to cleave you in two. We would not. Cleaving Yu Fu in half was a little unlikely, but he and Gu Yi would definitely be unable to escape. There are also eldest brother and second brother. Would you dare do it to them? Yu Fu looked unconvinced. Gu Yi finished speaking and had already stepped out ahead of them. Whoosh dash, two large balls of snow flew at Gu Wenqing's face, and he quickly turned around. Smack dash, the two large snowballs that had been carefully packed were bitterly swatted to the ground. Swish dash, a smaller snowball flew at his face, but it fell to the ground halfway. Smack. Gu Wenqing was unscathed. Just as he was about to speak, Yu Fu hopped out from behind the tree and threw the handful of snow in his face. His face had suddenly come into contact with something cold and momentarily froze. Ha ha ha. The remaining three also came out from behind the tree, laughing so hard that they were almost curled up. The snowballs that they had spent a good amount of time packing had completely failed to reach Gu Wenqing, but who knew that Yu Fu's snow attack would succeed? Yu Fu embarrassedly said, "Fourth brother, I didn't do it on purpose." Who knew that he would dodge 3 mountains but fall into a small gutter? Gu Wenqing turned his head and looked at the 3 who were curled up on the ground, who felt their hairs stand on end. "You 2 little brats, do you want me to die?" A snowball larger than his head, this truly was something that only the 2 of them could think of. "Hee hee, fourth brother, we had faith in your martial arts and knew that you would be able to avoid it." Gu Xiang and Gu Yi hastily began trying to remedy the situation. "Fourth brother, what's wrong?" Yu Fu felt that there seemed to be something on his mind. When he had walked over from the distance, she really would not have been able to tell that it was Gu Wenqing if not for his cloak. A son of the Gu family who usually kept his head held high now looked a little dispirited. With her saying it, everyone else began to take notice. "Fourth brother, what happened? Tell us, and we can help you come up with some ideas." Gu Wenqing awkwardly glanced at Gu Yi before looking at Su Yunyan. This matter really was not easy to say. But it also could not remain unsaid. "You guys, quickly come up with some ideas. Auntie and father said that they wanted to engage Su Yunyan to me. Aren't they just randomly playing at matchmaker? PFT. Su Yunyan looked like she really wanted to cough up blood. She really was not Madame Su's daughter. Gu Yi paused for a moment, and Gu Xiang prodded him with his elbow. "Say something." To have engaged her to Gu Wenqing, Madame Su really must not know about Su Yunyan and Gu Yi. This matter should have Gu Yi personally make an appearance to say something. Gu Huaijiang had already said that he wanted to have them marry the girls that they liked. He would not necessarily accept Madame Su's proposal. Gu Yi was a little dazed. He had never experienced such a situation before. Su Yunyan watched him and bit her lower lip. She bit so hard that it left a mark. Gu Wenqing and Yu Fu were also looking at him. Gu Yi was being watched by everyone, which made him more nervous. What are you all looking at me for? How is this related to me?" Su Yunyan's complexion instantly turned pale. "What are you saying?" Gu Xiang gritted his teeth while whispering to him, "How is this not related to you? If Yunyan really gets married to fourth brother, will you not feel sad? Don't say it." Su Yunyan was on the verge of tears. Shooting a fierce look at Gu Yi, she turned and ran off. "Sister Su." Yu Fu quickly pushed Gu Yi, sixth brother, quickly after her. The words questioning how it was related to him made even Yu Fu feel some heartache, much less Su Yunyan. Gu Yi stood in place and did not move but gloomily lowered his head. "You bastard sickly sprout, it's unrelated to you. Even if I died, it would not matter to you." Su Yunyan ran in the snow. Staggering along, she finally dropped to her butt and began to wail. Is eldest brother inside? Yu Fu had gone to Gu Shubai's courtyard to look for him. The one to come out was a young man with a dignified appearance in a military uniform. He saw Yu Fu and froze, then stammered, he's inside. Very quickly, he cupped his hands and saluted her. He remained silent for a long time before saying, "Greetings, young madam." The members of the Gu family army referred to Gu Shubai as the young general, then this young madam. Her face instantly turned red. "Yen Zhen, don't spout nonsense." Gu Shubai strode out of his room and glanced at the man. "She's young Miss Yu Fu." The girls of Eastern Ling paid the most attention to their reputations. He had not yet married Yu Fu, thus addressing her in this way was not good for her. Yen Zhen raised his head. "Yes, greetings, young Miss Yu Fu. You are a great deal taller than before." Yu Fu loved it the most when others said that she had grown taller. "Really? You've met me before?" "I have. When young Miss was treating the head general's poisoning, I was also at the camp and saw a young Miss a few times from the distance. It's just that I was not allowed to enter the main tent, thus young Miss never saw me." Gu Shubai said, "This is Yen Zheng. You should still remember General Yen Huaisher, right? Yen Zheng is his son." "Ah, so you were the son of General Yan's family." "General Yan is a very good person, and he took very good care of me while at the military camp." Yen Zheng smiled without reservation, as he should. Everyone is family. The Gu family's army was a family. Yu Fu looked up. "Since we are all family, don't go calling me young miss. It's fine to call me by name." "Yen Zheng, your name sounds quite good." Gu Shubai mindlessly glanced at her. Yen Zheng noticed a difference in the look in his eyes and instantly put on a serious expression. "This officer does not dare. Young Miss must have come looking for the young general for something, right? This officer will be departing first." After saying this, he cupped his hands, turned, and left. Gu Shubai stepped forward, placed a hand on his shoulder, and spoke in a voice that Yu Fu could not hear. "I know how you guys have been calling Yu Fu. If I hear anything like young madam again, don't blame me for not holding back." His voice sounded quite gentle, but it made people's hair stand on end. True dignity never relied on fierce fighting. This is something taught to the members of the Gu family. Yen Zheng subconsciously straightened his back upon hearing this and solemnly said, "Yes." It seemed that the path from young miss to young madam was still quite long. "For you to come running over in such a hurry, what happened?" Gu Shubai turned around to look for Yu Fu, and only then did Yu Fu remember her original reason for coming over. "Oh right, the head general wants to engage Sister Su to fourth brother. Did you know about this?" "I've heard about it." He nodded. "What's wrong?" "But Sister Su doesn't like fourth brother, and fourth brother doesn't like Sister Su. The one that she likes is sixth brother, and sixth brother also likes Sister Su, yet he's always awkward and keeps saying things that make her sad." Thinking to every time that Gu Xiang had teased Su Yunyan, Gu Shubai seemed to have a rough idea of what was happening. He is only 16 years old and is still just a child. When it comes to feelings of love, it's inevitable that he will be a bit slow. When it comes to this sort of thing, girls will understand a little earlier. Yunyan is only 15 and has been handling this far more maturely than Gu Yi. So it was like this. With something on her mind, Yu Fu said, "Then when eldest brother was 16, were you also like sixth brother?" It was fortunate that she had met a 20-year-old Gu Shubai. If he had been like Gu Yi and did not understand anything, would she be even more heartbroken than Su Yunyan? "I was not." Gu Shubai's expression remained calm. "I'm not a fool." Yu Fu was stunned. "You want me to think of a way to have Gu Yi know what he truly feels and have him go to father to ask for Yunyan, isn't that right?" "Right. Does eldest brother have some ideas?" Fourth brother and fifth brother have been trying to convince him for some time, but they haven't been able to make any progress. I was responsible for trying to comfort Sister Sue, but Gu Shubai shook his head with a smile. Your fourth brother and fifth brother are both still children who have not fully matured. How could they possibly convince Gui? You are even. You and I have no misunderstandings. That Yun Yan isn't jealous of you right now is already pretty good. How could she possibly be willing to hear you out? A group of children was doing childish things. He patted Yu Fu's head. It's fortunate that you are smart and knew to come to find eldest brother. In the future, no matter what sort of difficulties arise, you must come and find me first. Do you understand? Yu Fu cheerfully replied, I understand. Let's quickly go and find sixth brother. Gu Shubai entered the room with Gu Yi, while the others waited outside and worried. We counseled Gu Yi for such a long time, yet it was pointless. I hope that eldest brother is able to move him. Eldest brother has experience. He will definitely find it easier to advise him than those of us who are without experience. Yu Fu's ears suddenly perked up and looked over at Gu Wenqing and Gu Xiang. What experience does eldest brother have? With her look of great concern, she had a bit of the flair of a proper madam. Gu Xiang froze. He has the experience of liking a girl. Could it be that you don't know? The girl that Gu Shubai liked, was it not just her? Yu Fu's face turned a little red. Oh. The two of them exchanged a smile and thought to themselves that this was what little Yu Fu looked like when jealous. Eldest brother, I've understood. With a bang, the door was pushed open, and Gu Yi ran out through the door. Put on a cloak. The voice from inside the room was very calm. Immediately following this, a cloak flew straight at Gu Yi. He caught it and ran off without having a chance to put it on. The three watched him run off in confusion and could only look at Gu Shubai in search of an answer. Inside the room, he sat next to the tea table. With a cup of fragrant tea in his hand, the corners of his lips were curled up in a slight smile, and he looked very natural. Father. Gu Yi hastily ran to the main hall. Upon entering, he happened to see Gu Huaijiang chatting with Madame Su. Seeing him barge in while bringing the cold wind and a wet patch appearing beneath his feet, Gu Huaijiang could not stop himself from furrowing his brow. What do I usually teach you guys? Gu Yi was the youngest, and when he was younger, had the worst health. Gu Huaijiang had always been the most lenient with him. Of course, this was only compared to Gu Shubai and the others. Compared to the ways in which the children of other families were raised, it was still more strict. Because of how he was raised, he was the most lively of the brothers, but he would not make mistakes with the more important rules. What could make him so frantic today? Madame Su was also quite shocked, forgetting what she was just about to say. Father, I've made a mistake. I will come back later. Forget it, he must have something urgent to have come in such a rush. Just listen to what he has to say. Madame Su had spoken, thus Gu Huaijiang would naturally give her face. Gu Yi turned back around. Seeing that Madame Su was also present, he suddenly felt a little too embarrassed to speak. Quickly come and warm yourself by the brazier. Look at how much snow is on you. Even your shoes are soaked. Madame Su directed for a brazier to be placed near him. Sure enough, placing both feet on it made him feel much warmer, and Gu Yi began to think. Eldest sister, there's no need to worry too much about him. His health was not too good when he was younger. Taking care of him now will spoil him. Now, his condition is much better and is even a bit better than Gu Xiang and the others. There's no need to worry about him. Madame Su smiled warmly. The two of them were not in any rush, thus they sipped tea while waiting for Gu Yi to speak. After a long time, Gu Yi quietly said, Father, I heard that you want to match Yunyan with fourth brother. Is this true? What did you say? Gu Huaijiang had not heard clearly. Gu Yi's face immediately started to turn red. He had finally managed to summon the courage to ask, so how could Gu Huaijiang not have heard? Ha! I was saying, a man without the slightest bit of metal, even a young girl like you Fu isn't as twitchy as you are. What exactly is the matter? Some things could be tolerated, and others could not be tolerated. Being compared to a little girl, Gu Yi was naturally displeased. With a rush of courage, he blurted, Father, I want to marry the tomboy. When he beat around the bush, he really beat around the bush. When he was direct, he was really direct. Madame Su nearly spat out a mouthful of tea. Forcefully suppressing a smile, she used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her mouth. There was not much of a reaction from Gu Huaijiang. Looking carefully, he was faintly smiling. Based on the way the two looked, why did it seem like they knew a long time ago? Gu Yi was young and did not understand this sort of sequence of events. You came too late. Father has already engaged Yunyan to your fourth brother. In the future, she will be your fourth sister-in-law. Pay attention to how you address her. Fourth sister-in-law. Gu Yi was so angry that his face was bright red, but father, she doesn't like fourth brother, and fourth brother doesn't like her. Didn't you say that you would let us marry the girls that we like? Why are you breaking your promise? Yunyan is different from other girls. Father and your aunt have already discussed it and needed to choose one for her. Right now, it's your aunt who has taken an interest in your fourth brother, and father feels that this is quite good. Gu Yi looked at Madame Su and suddenly understood the most important part. This was to say that as long as Madame Su thought highly of him, Su Yunyan could be engaged to him, was that not right? Auntie, do you no longer love me? Where am I lacking compared to fourth brother? He partially squatted down next to Madame Su and acted spoiled, making use of all the tricks he knew. Auntie, when I was little, didn't you say that you loved me the most? Why is it that when you have something nice, you didn't think of me and only thought of fourth brother? How is marrying Yunyan a good thing for you? Auntie recalls that you two were on bad terms, thus I never considered you. Madame Su replied with a question, which made Gu Yi's face turn even redder. That's not being on bad terms. That's just two childhood sweethearts enjoying their childhood together. When others have bullied me for no reason, I have never bothered to fight back. Ever since childhood, I have only ever bullied her alone. So it was like that. Madame Su covered her mouth with a handkerchief and quietly laughed, while Gu Huaijiang slightly shook his head at her. Do not let this brat off so easily, lest he not know how to cherish her in the future. So you liked Yunyan and didn't hate Yunyan. How can this be good? Looking at Yunyan, she doesn't, says who? She likes me. She only likes me. If you don't believe it, just wait for a little. I will go and bring her to have her tell Auntie. Auntie, just wait for me. Saying this, he rapidly stood up to rush out when a person suddenly leaped out from behind a screen. Hey! Where are you running off to look for me? It was Su Yunyan. Gu Yi's eyes widened and looked at Gu Huaijiang and Madame Su in disbelief. The two elders enigmatically exchanged a look, no longer able to hold back their smiles. Very well, he had been plotted against by the two old-timers. Su Yunyan's face was very red, as she slowly walked over. Weren't you going to look for me? I'm right here. What are you looking for me for? The two stood facing one another, blushing furiously. They smiled foolishly for a long time, yet did not say anything of value. Gu Huaijiang coughed dryly. His foolish son really made him worried. Oh, that, father said that he would marry you to me. What do you think? Gu Huaijiang had just taken a sip of tea, and now that tea was caught in his throat. With a hand on his chest, he began coughing. Gu could tell that he was really coughing this time. At the beginning of the 12th lunar month, things inside Lotus Courtyard were packed up, as Madame Su and Su Yunyan would be returning to Jinling. Why must you return to Jinling? The engagement has already been determined. Auntie, wouldn't it be fine if you just lived here with her? Upon hearing that they would be returning to Jinling, Gu anxiously rushed over to try and stop them. One half of a twin fish jade pendant on his hip swayed with his movements, making a bit of sound. Su Yunyan looked at him with a smile, then continued packing her things. She also had half of a twin fish jade pendant on her hip. When the two pieces of jade were put together, they were in the shape of a Tai Chi symbol. Apparently, these jade pendants had been left behind by the late Lord Marquis. Now, they were split between the two of them, which served as a token of their engagement. Madame Su directed the grannies to pack the luggage and said with a smile, "Now that the engagement has been decided, it's even more important that we return to Jinling. Yunyan is a daughter of Jinling's Su family. In the future, she will need to set out for her marriage from Jinling. The Su family is not as prominent as Marquis Gu's manor, but it is also not a nameless family. How can we just live here so casually? Moreover, it's almost time for the new year. Without me, I fear that the Su manor will be unable to have a good new year. Yunyan and I need to go back to take care of the celebration to keep others from saying that the Su manor has fallen apart now that her father has passed." Madame Su spoke very reasonably, providing him with all of the reasons that they needed to leave and could not stay. "Stupid brat, did you think that getting engaged means that I became yours? You sure are optimistic. Yunyan's period of mourning still hasn't ended." Gu Shubai walked in through the door and saluted Madame Su. "Auntie, father told me to escort you guys back to Jinling. I came to see if there is anything else you needed." Gu smacked himself on the head. Only now did he remember that Yunyan was still in mourning. Though her engagement had been set, to really get married, they would need to wait until her mourning period ended. Madame Su said, "I have been tidying up this place quite well, and the people going back are the same as the ones when we came. In total, it's just a few maidservant, grannies, and guards. Your father sure is considerate, having you escort us back during the cold 12th month. You will also need to deal with the troublesome return trip." "It's not troublesome. The trip to Jinling is not far for me. For two ladies like you and Yunyan, it is too far. In addition to this, there have been many snowfalls this winter, so the waterways are no longer open. You will only be able to take the land route back. Father was worried that it would not be safe, thus he specifically had me bring along a group of soldiers and horses to escort you back." Su Yunyan's ears perked up. "Eldest cousin will be escorting us back along with some soldiers. Then it will definitely be very magnificent. Letting the people of Jinling catch a glimpse of the Gu family army will surely be very shocking for them." Hearing her in such high spirits, there did not seem to be any trace of reluctance. Could it be that seeing eldest brother's mighty and heroic figure, she would forget about him? Gu became envious. "Eldest brother, I will go with you. If you go, eldest cousin will also need to worry about taking care of you. If something happened along the way, would it not just cause trouble?" Su Yunyan did not think too much about it, and when the words came out of her mouth, Madame Su gave her a look. To say that she was more mature than Gu in truth, the two children were basically the same. They were both too naive. This was also one reason that Madame Su needed to bring Su Yunyan back. She needed to wait for both of them to grow a little older, so they would not have such a bumpy relationship. They would wait until Gu had matured to the point that he was like Gu Shubai and until Su Yunyan matured to the point that, well, even if she reached Yufu's level, it was fine. "You actually said that I would cause trouble." My martial arts were taught to me personally by father. I am also very strong, alright. TSK, I don't believe it. If you don't believe it, let's go out and compare a bit. I'll give you 3 strikes. The two ran out into the yard to mess around once again. Madame Su turned her head to take a look and saw that Su Yunyan's clothes had been carelessly tossed onto the bed. It was a proper mess. Departing from Lotus Courtyard, he took the chance to pass by the western wing. Eldest brother, what exactly did you say to sixth brother to have him obediently go and look for the head general? The engagement between Gu Yi and Su Yunyan had developed at an astounding pace, and they had exchanged tokens so quickly. As soon as Su Yunyan's mourning period came to an end, they would be able to get married. Yu Fu was extremely curious and also a little envious. It would have been nice if she had not mentioned her master during the birthday celebration. No, if she did not tell master, the outcome would be really serious. Gu Shubai had a very enigmatic expression. In truth, it was very simple. I just asked him 2 questions. First, when father engaged you to me, was he happy or unhappy? His answer was obviously unhappy. Gu Yi had already expressed this to Yu Fu many times, talking about how Gu Huaijiang was being unfair and being biased toward eldest brother. Why should Yu Fu be engaged to eldest brother? Then the second question. The second question, was he unhappy because the youngest one was about to become his eldest sister-in-law, or was it because you were engaged to someone else? Yu Fu thought back. Aside from how biased Gu Huaijiang was, Gu Yi said even more that he did not want to call her eldest sister-in-law. You are our little sister. So it was like that. Yu Fu came to a sudden realization, so sixth brother just thought for a moment and knew that his unhappiness toward our engagement was not the same as his unhappiness toward sister Su's engagement to fourth brother. It was not that he did not want to call Su Yunyan fourth sister-in-law. He just did not want her to marry someone other than him. Eldest brother is really amazing, being able to convince him with just a few words. Just look at how clingy he is with sister Su. It's not that I am amazing. Gu Shubai maintained his usual modesty, saying with a faint smile, it's that he's too stupid. Idiots have their own blessings, as Gu Yi gritted his teeth and went to look for Gu Huaijiang. Gu Huaijiang also agreed to let him accompany them on the trip to Jinling. You are already 16 years of age. It's time for you to go out and put your skills to the test. Your eldest brother was already able to take responsibility for his actions by your age. I will let you go to Jinling this time to get acquainted with things. The last 5 words were said in a quiet voice, but Gu Yi was rejoicing and did not hear them clearly. Father, go to Jinling and what? It's nothing. You need to listen to your eldest brother. Don't cause him any trouble. How could I possibly cause eldest brother any trouble? With me there, he can bring 5 fewer soldiers, no 10. Security inside Eastern Ling's borders had always been quite good. With Marquis Gu's manor soldiers personally forming the escort, there would likely not be any who would dare to do anything. Better safe than sorry. On this side, Gu Huaijiang had allowed Gu Yi to go out. On the other, he advised Gu Shubai to bring more soldiers. Bring an additional 10 soldiers, no, 20. Gu Shubai was not worried about Gu Yi. Though he was young, his martial skill was far greater than other youths his age. The one that worried him more was Yu Fu. The special envoy from Western Kun had not yet left, and that dislikable, big junior disciple was still here. Recently, he had not been shameless enough to scale the walls of Marquis Gu's manor, and the people in court knew about him stealing military secrets. The eldest prince and the second prince had also distanced themselves from him by a great deal. A prince from an enemy state who had stolen military secrets, they were already giving Western Kun face by not killing him, yet he wanted to be treated well. Dream on. The night before they were to set out, he went to Gu Jyoga's courtyard. Eldest brother never comes without a reason. What is the purpose behind this visit? Ever since Gu Huaijiang announced Gu Shubai's engagement to Yu Fu at his birthday banquet, Gu Jyoga's attitude toward him had become a great deal more distant. He also spent his days feeling dejected. He was no longer as cheerful as before. I will be escorting Auntie and Yunyan back to Jinling tomorrow, and I will be bringing sixth brother with me. With me not here, things at home will be left to you. Gu Shubai did not care about how he felt and just entered the room. Eldest brother, don't worry. This isn't your first time going out. In the past, I took care of things quite well. Nothing will happen. Gu Jyogu followed him in and sat down. The brothers sat down across from each other on the sofa, and it fell silent for a moment. Gu Shubai shook his head. This time is different. I know that you have always taken good care of things at home. The one I wish to entrust to you this time is Yu Fu. Yu Fu is also my little sister. Of course, I will take good care of her. Why does eldest brother need to specifically make this request? Gu Jyogu hastily declared his status. Before the two of them were officially engaged, they were all Yu Fu's older brothers, and none were any more intimate than the others. Gu Shubai warned him, she is your future eldest sister-in-law. Slow down, the engagement is not yet official. Even if you do get engaged, as long as the marriage has not happened, she cannot be considered my eldest sister-in-law. Gu Jyogu refused to give an inch. He had never truly fought with Gu Shubai over anything. Even if there was only 1 year separating the two, Gu Shubai, as the heir of Marquis Gu's manor, was privy to many things that the others were not. He would not fight over anything else. Yu Fu was the only one he refused to let go of so easily. Gu Shubai looked at him, and the two brothers looked each other in the eye. Their masculinity burst forth and collided with one another. This sort of thing often only came about from two causes. One was power, and the other was women. After a long period passed, Gu Shubai let out a laugh. He relented, all right, not as your future eldest sister-in-law but as your and my little sister. The special envoy from Western Kun has not yet left, the eldest prince and the second prince are fighting openly and in secret, and Inshua is even more worrisome. With me not in the capital, I will feel quite uneasy. I will leave all of this to you. Gu Jyogu's eyes shimmered briefly. Kun Wushang. Did eldest brother also notice? Yu Fu said that Kun Wushang was a carefree person, and most people in the capital believe that he was just a willful prince without any real power and without much of a brain. But they did not consider just how many princes died during Western Kun's struggle for the position of crown prince. If Kun Wushang really did not have much of a brain, how could he have survived to this point? I have. When he looks at others, he deliberately acts foolish, but there is a hint of ambition there. When he looks at Yu Fu, he really acts like someone who is carefree and without any schemes. That did not look like the way a junior disciple would look at a senior disciple. Gu Jyogu nodded. Regardless of whether it was for Gu Shubai or for himself, he could not allow Kun Wushang to get close to Yu Fu. The two had reached an agreement. When it came to Yu Fu's status, they would temporarily push it to the side and not bring it up. How many soldiers will eldest brother be bringing to escort Auntie back? Initially, it was to be 20. After Gu Yi was added in, father wants me to bring 40. Gu Jyogu slightly furrowed his brow, so many. Father has always kept a low profile and usually only brings a few people when going out. This time, he suddenly wants you to bring so many people to protect Auntie and them. It wouldn't be that he really thinks Gu Yi will cause trouble, right? Gu Shubai looked at him in agreement. Gu Gu Jiugu really was understanding, unlike Gu Yi, who was made his displeasure very clear upon hearing this news and said that Gu Huaijiang was looking down on him too much. Could it be that something really will happen? Gu Shubai said, Father said that there are people from Western Kun in the country, and there are people in court with their eyes on Marquis Gu's manor. It would be best to be cautious. It might not be that something will happen. There's no need for you to worry. How could he not worry? They all understood that based on the keen senses that Gu Huaijiang had cultivated through his many decades on the battlefield, his judgment was very rarely incorrect. No, 40 is too few. They're all ladies. When the time comes, how will you be able to protect them all? Gu Jiugu had already cast the matter with Yu Fu to the back of his mind, as he did his best to convince Gu Shubai to bring some more soldiers on his escort. Gu Huaijiang said 40, so it was 40. Before setting out, everyone exited the manor to send them off, as Gu Yi shifted from side to side atop his horse. It was not a result of having never ridden a horse. Instead, it was because he had never gone on such a long trip before, thus he was filled with excitement. Despite their age, this was the first time that Gu Xiang would be apart from Gu Yi, and he was not too used to it. You need to be careful along the way. Don't go causing eldest brother any trouble. Also, once you get to Jinling, don't have so much fun that you forget about home. We will be waiting for you to celebrate the new year. On this trip to Jinling, 10 days would be enough for a round trip. Doing some calculations, they would definitely be able to return in time for the new year. Sixth brother, these are some pastries that were prepared for you. There aren't any crab cakes because those will crumble with the slightest movement, so there are only some items that won't break so easily. At any rate, it will taste better than dried rations. Yu Fu lifted a cloth bundle and hung it on his saddle. Eldest brother, if you get hungry, just eat the pastry. There are the sweet green rice balls that you like the most. Gu Yi, then why don't you hang it from eldest brother's saddle? Yu Fu said earnestly, hanging it from eldest brother's saddle doesn't look good. Gu Yi, so it was fine if he did not look good, and it was of utmost importance that eldest brother looked good, right? Gu Shubai nodded to her, it's no longer early. I fear that it will snow soon. Father, we will be setting off first. Su Yunyan poked her head out through the carriage's window. Yu Fu, next time, you come play in Jinling. I will bring you to see Yuatai, and the city moat has many beautiful gems. It's also fine if you can't come. I will quickly be returning to the capital. Alright, Sister Su, until next time. Wearing small red gloves, she waved to her. Watching the procession depart, snowflakes began to fall, and their lines of sight became blurry. Sure enough, Gu Shubai was right, as it had begun snowing so soon. Their journey would definitely be very difficult. Let's all go back inside. Jiugu, your eldest brother is no longer here, so the matters in the manor will be left to you to handle. Eldest brother has advised me of this earlier. Father, please feel at ease to handle military matters. Son will take care of matters in the manor. There was still more than half a month remaining until the new year, and it was almost time for the school to let out for winter break. Gu Yi had asked for leave and left. On this day, Yu Fu went to the school with Gu Wenqing and Gu Xiang to attend the final class of the year. Lin Fengmiao stepped into the classroom and looked around in good spirits. Not seeing Gu Yi was truly a gratifying thing. Once today's class ends, winter break will begin. When the Lantern Festival has ended, everyone will return to class. This old man knows that you are all burning with impatience, thus I also have no desire to hold classes today. The students nearly erupted in cheers. Not having class was good. Just let them go and play. Sidao, bring it in. Zhou Sidao brought in a stack of long red paper. Each strip was as long as a person was tall, and he carefully placed them on the table. Our Guangsha studies tradition is to have the students write a New Year's couplet before the winter break. The couplets are then placed all over the classroom. Right now, each person will be given one piece of paper each. Once you have finished writing it and submitted it, you may be dismissed from class. They could leave after they finished writing it. This was great. Everyone rubbed their hands in anticipation, brimming with impatience. Before Zhou Xidao had even distributed the strips of paper, one person had already dipped their brush in ink. Each person only gets 4 strips, and you must write a New Year's couplet. Regardless of what the end result looks like, it will be hung in the classroom. I welcome everyone to be thoughtful with their writing. Hiss. Someone inhaled sharply, shakily pulling back the brush that they were about to bring to paper for fear of dripping ink on the paper. The New Year's couplets being hung up in Guangsha study would be there for the year. If they wrote too poorly, would they not be losing face from the beginning of the year until the next? They would need to write well for this. However, it was already too late for some. Oh, Teacher Lin, why didn't you say so earlier? One voiced their complaints, and everyone turned to look at him. On one of Gu Changming's pieces of paper, the word spring had already been messily written down. It was immediately evident that he had begun writing without much thought. Yu Fu covered her mouth and secretly laughed, then looked over at Gu Wenqing. He had already begun writing. His posture was calm and relaxed, and he looked like he had a well-thought-out plan. Gu Xiang was still nibbling on his brush while deep in thought. He knew just how talented his older brother and younger sister were. He would need to get a little more serious. He could not lose to them by too much. Not long later, Yu Fu also thought of a fitting couplet and wrote it down on some spare paper. Gu Xiang tilted his head to take a look. This is a good idea. Why did I not think of it? Write it down first to take a look before copying it over to the red paper. The students nearby that heard him all ignored the red paper and picked up pieces of scrap paper. Zhou Xidao nodded his head in satisfaction and gave Lin Fengmiao a look. To be so thorough in her approach to things at such a young age, Yu Fu was the youngest in the class, but she did not fall behind at all when it came to the classes. Even more, she had a cleverness that others did not. Gu Wenqing was the first to stop writing. He had drafted things up while writing and did it very smoothly. Blowing lightly on the ink, then writing his name below the couplet in small font, he then handed it to Lin Fengmiao. Silvery white snow heralds the end of the year, gentle winds and light rains are omens of a good year. Good, very good, your work has always been like this, gentle and refined. Your handwriting is also neat and elegant. Let's hang it up in the corridor to the backyard. Everyone looked up. It was written so well, so why was it being hung up in the backyard where it would not be seen? Lin Fengmiao slowly looked around, and everyone suddenly realized. He wanted to stick the ugliest one in the place where it would be seen the most. When it comes to ginger, older really is spicier. This trick really was vicious. Tian, title is an idiom meaning that older people can be harder to deal with because of their experience with many things. The cold winds howled outside, yet, inside the classroom, some people were sweating up a storm. The older students were fine, but the younger students were looking all around. In the end, they bit the bullet and went to look for Zhou Xidao. Teacher Zhou, I messed up my papers. Can you give me another 2? Zhou Xidao looked behind him. Behind this young student, there were many pairs of eyes filled with hope. He was almost unable to stop himself from smiling. I cannot change the rules set by Teacher Lin. After saying this, he pointed in Lin Fengmiao's direction with his chin. Gu Changming ran back in fear. How could he dare to try and negotiate with Teacher Lin? It was unavoidable. Of the ones that he had messed up, he could only choose the two that he thought looked best. In his seat, he lifted all four, but they all looked roughly the same. He was deciding which dwarf to promote. But it was still just a dwarf. If he handed this couplet in, Teacher Lin might just leave the spot at Guangsha Studies entrance to him. He would lose a great deal of face. At this moment, Yu Fu had also begun writing. Her couplet had been written on some scrap paper and carefully refined before being copied over. It was even neater than Gu Wenqing's. Looking forward to the flowers and trees of spring, enjoying a good year of laughter and wine. Good, this couplet is so good that it should be hung up on the entrance to the firewood shed. Unfortunately, this old man is reluctant to have it in the company of soot. How about we have it in the backyard on this old man's door? Yes. Gu Wenqing picked up the couplet and was about to go and stick it up when he saw that Yu Fu had finished, thus he waited to go with her. She turned her head and saw that Gu Xiang was also about to finish. Fourth brother, let's wait for a little and go with fifth brother. Gu Xiang happened to put his brush down at this moment and carefully blew on the paper, only bringing it over to Teacher Lin when the ink had completely dried. His writing was naturally not as nice as Gu Wenqing and Yu Fu's. If the ink ran because it had not dried, it would look even worse. Yu Fu stood next to Gu Wenqing and suddenly began walking toward the students' area. I still have 2 blank ones here. I'll give them to you. Gu Changming was in the middle of a difficult decision when he suddenly saw a pair of small white hands holding 2 strips of red paper. It was like a miracle sent by the heavens. Looking up, the messenger of the heavens was Yu Fu. I already turned mine in and have no use for these 2. Yu Fu was worried that he would not accept them out of shame, thus she specifically added an explanation. Gu Changming's face was bright red, and his head was lowered. Thank you. Gu Wenqing also brought over his 2 remaining pieces of paper. I also have 2 strips here. Hold back a little when using them. You can also learn from Yu Fu and write your couplet on some scrap paper first before copying it over. Gu Changming looked over at Yu Fu's seat. Sure enough, there was some scrap paper with a couplet written on it. It also showed signs of some corrections. I'm not as amazing as you two and only felt a little more satisfied after my second attempt. Gu Xiang walked over with his couplet in hand and shrugged, expressing his powerlessness. Together, the 3 exited the classroom and headed toward the backyard. Gu Changming looked at Yu Fu's parting figure in a daze. Ever since she had gone over to the older students' class, he had not seen her much. In his mind, she was still the girl whose hair he had accidentally bumped loose. Looking at her now, she had grown taller and become a little more mature. She looked like a small deity. Yu Fu, have you forgotten? That Gu Changming bullied you before while you were still in Teacher Zhou's class. Gu Wenqing held their couplets, and Gu Xiang held the glue. While they walked, he asked Yu Fu. I remember, and you guys even gave him a beating. Yet you still gave him your paper. He is a member of the extended Gu family. If we really let him have his mess hung up at the front door, how bad would the loss of face be for all of us? As Yu Fu said this, she looked back. There was nobody there, as the other students still had not come out. She lowered her voice. The main reason is that I accidentally glanced over at his desk, and the writing was so ugly that it was offensive. I could not bear to look at that. Gu Xiang burst out laughing. Let's paste ours in the corridor first, then go and paste Yu Fu's on Teacher Lin's door. Gu Wenqing placed all of the couplets on a bench in the corridor, then picked out his and Gu Xiang's. One was stuck at the entrance to the corridor, and the other was stuck at the other end. With Yu Fu's being pasted up, the entirety of Guangsha Studies' backyard had been claimed by Marquis Gu's manor. The 3 of them exited the backyard and saw the other students come out. They were all carrying ladders and glue. Some looked bitter and some looked pleased. Let's go. Let's go and take a look at the entrance. Based on Lin Fengmiao's arrangements, the one plastered outside Guangsha Study's front entrance would definitely be the one that he thought was the worst. Sure enough, there was a large crowd gathered around the front entrance. There were some who had already put theirs up but had not yet washed their hands of the glue, and some who had not yet put theirs up and were still carrying their couplets. At the entrance, there stood a wooden ladder, and a chubby youth was shakily climbing down. He was quite frightened. Of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, spring is the best. Of plums, peaches, pears, and apricots, plums come in first. One person burst out laughing, "Golly, is this a couplet, or are you playing mahjong?" The youth on the ladder had finally climbed down, and it was Gu Changming's older brother, Gu Chongxing. He ferociously turned his head and argued, "What nonsense about mahjong? This is a very good New Year's couplet. It's not just very good, it's truly the best, otherwise, how could it be plastered outside our study's main entrance?" Yu Fu could not stop herself from laughing. In the crowd, Gu Changming secretly looked at her. Being affected by her sweet laughter, he also began to laugh. Will young Miss be training with her needles out in the corridor again? Lian Bai entered holding a cup of tea. Seeing Yao Lan take care of tidying up Yu Fu's silver needles, she hastily said, "It's so cold outside. If young Miss wishes to train, it would be inside the eastern wing, right? We can just all go over there." Whenever she had some spare time, she would go out into the corridor and practice the flying needle technique that Gu Shubai had taught her. There were very few people who passed by that area, thus there was no need to worry about hurting anyone. After the arrival of autumn, Auntie Li cleaned up the eastern wing for Yu Fu to keep her from getting too cold from the winter wind out in the corridor. "Sister Lian Bai, I'm not going to train with the needle. I just want to sew a few things." Lian Bai looked more closely. Next to the needles that Yao Lan was tidying up, there lay a small ball of embroidery thread. She smiled and said, "I knew that young Miss knew how to do everything, but this is my first time seeing young Miss do some feminine work. Since it's the end of the year, if young Miss sews some small pouches for Lord Marquis and the eldest young Sir, they will definitely be very happy." Yu Fu was also thinking along these lines, but there are many people in the manor, so it might be too late to give one to everyone. "I can only make some for the more important ones." More important? Was Lord Marquis more important, or was the eldest young Sir more important? Lian Bai secretly smiled but did not dare ask. Putting down the tea, she retreated from the room. "What is your young Miss doing?" Turning around, she saw Gu Jiugu walking over. He wore a thick fox-fur cloak and shoes with a sandalwood bottom. It was immediately clear that he had just returned from outside the manor. Lian Bai hastily bowed her head. Young Miss is inside her room, having Yao Lan tidy up some needles. She said that she wanted to do some sewing. "Second young Sir, please go in. This servant will go and prepare some tea for you." After saying this, she hastily retreated, but her gaze continued to remain fixed on the surface of Gu Jiugu's shoes. There was a patch that had become soaked. Yu Fu. Master and servant were currently seated on the sofa thinking about something. Seeing Gu Jiugu enter, Yao Lan stood up and received his cloak, and carried it out. Gu Jiugu sat down next to the sofa and glanced over at her hands. "I came at a really inopportune moment. You have not yet begun work, so I won't get a chance to see your embroidery skill." Yu Fu paused for a moment and suddenly remembered that each region had its own style for embroidery. The things that people embroidered from each region would have very noticeable traits. For example, Suzhou embroideries were neat and tightly woven. Sichuan embroideries had tidy stitching, and Hunan embroideries placed more emphasis on realism. If she revealed her embroidery to others, it would provide others with a clue on her true background. She put down the embroidery hoop, second brother still wishes to know about my identity, is that right? Gu Jiugu froze. Lian Bai entered the room with a cup of tea. After placing it in front of him, she placed a brazier near his feet. Second young sir just returned from handling something outside the manor. You must have come to see the young miss before even getting a chance to change clothes, right? Look, even your shoes are wet. It would be best to let them warm up with the brazier. Yu Fu lowered her head to take a look. Sure enough, there was a patch that was darker than the rest. The end of the year was the time for the various manors in the capital to visit one another. Gu Shubai was not present, thus the matters in the manor were handed over to Gu Jiugu. He had recently been exceptionally busy, yet he had still especially come to see her, thus she truly should not have any complaints about him. Second brother, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and see me. Compared to what she had said earlier, this was far gentler. Gu Jiugu said, it was my fault. There are some things that even father and eldest brother will not ask, yet I still wanted to find out too. He could not say that it was to understand her better and get her to like him more, right? To protect you better and to keep people like Kuan Wushang from gathering around you. Yu Fu laughed and said, second brother, don't worry. Even Yao Lan can't be bothered to deal with him, so how could he get close to me? If not for it being the end of the year, His Majesty might have already sent them packing back to Western Kuan, right? The special envoy from Western Kuan is way too shameless. Kuan Wushang attempted to steal military secrets, and though he did not succeed, it's something that everyone in court knows. In spite of this, they still have the face to stay in Eastern Ling. Eastern Ling is a country that emphasizes courtesy, thus it's no good to send guests packing at the end of the year. After saying this, he glanced at Yu Fu, but she did not look particularly embarrassed. Them not leaving makes it clear that they have some other goal. What other goal? Gu Jiugu had unconsciously blurted this out and immediately regretted it. Yu Fu spent her days in the manor and did not visit the court. How could she possibly know what Western Kuan's goals might be? Subconsciously, he felt that Yu Fu was smart and sensitive, able to notice things that others could not. He found her judgment to be reliable. I don't know either. Based on my understanding of Kuan Wushang, since he said that Master told him to take care of me, and he already saw that I am living very well in Marquis Gu's manor. His mission has already been completed, thus he should have already returned to Immortals Valley to take credit for something that he did not do and learn some new poison techniques. Is he very eager with his studies in Immortals Valley? That's right. Master is someone who does not pay attention to the mortal world and does not involve himself with the struggles of the world. But he knows that Western Kuan did not send so many people to become apprentices for nothing. That's why he has kept his distance from these disciples. Kuan Wushang is a prince from Western Kuan and naturally is not able to learn most important things from Master. This was another method to ensure that he did not disrupt the balance of power between Western Kuan and Eastern Ling. Gu Jiugu fell deep in thought. The deity of medicine is indeed a lofty person to not be affected by the conflicts of the world. I just wonder, how would such a lofty person respond to father's decision on the engagement? Speaking of this, it had been nearly a month since Gu Huaijiang had sent out that letter. Immortals Valley should have already received it. Yu Fu tilted her head, her expression a little unhappy. Master will probably curse out the head general, the kind that's a little ugly to hear. Be meticulous in your cleaning. Lord Marquis' main room must be tidied up properly. Since it's the end of the year, there will be many guests. We must not show any impropriety. On the 18th of the 12th month, the manor began preparations for the New Year's celebration and began tidying up. Qi Zhou had been busy with welcoming guests and seeing them off for the past few days. Fearing that he would not be able to pay attention to the tidiness, he personally took care of supervising the subordinates. Yu Fu accompanied Gu Huaijiang for a game of chess inside the room. Looking out through a half-opened window, the yard was filled with servants moving back and forth. Qian was like a reliable old pine tree that could not be blown over by the wind. As long as he was standing there, everyone had a sense of direction. It was very methodical. Gu Huaijiang put down a chess piece. I initially thought that Shu Bai and his group would have been able to return by now. It's already the 18th. There are many things to take care of in the manor, and Steward Qi's back is breaking from exhaustion. That's right, it was already the 18th. Did eldest brother send a letter to say when he would be back? The previous letter is one that arrived 5 days ago. It said that they safely escorted Yunyan's group to Jinling and would be setting out to return. He suddenly remembered something and stood up. Flipping through the mail in the study, his eyes lit up. This is a letter that came from Immortals Valley. Why was I not told immediately? The servant at the door bowed and said, Lord Marquis, please calm your anger. This is a letter from Immortals Valley, but it was not sent by the deity of medicine. Gu Huaijiang had sent someone to deliver a letter to Sun Qi in Immortals Valley the previous month to discuss the matter of Gu Shubai and Yu Fu's engagement. They had been waiting for a reply this entire time. However, he never replied. Instead, he had someone else from Immortals Valley send a reply. What sort of craziness was this? Yu Fu stared at the letter and suddenly had a bad feeling about this. She watched Gu Huaijiang opened up the letter. On this large piece of paper, there were just a few large words. It did not look like a letter. Rather, it looked more like a declaration of war. Master instructed me to respond to the letter in his stead. Master has just 2 words, dream on. Gu Huaijiang's expression suddenly became stiff. Head General, let me take a look. Gu Huaijiang suddenly lifted the letter up high, and Yu Fu could no longer reach it even when she jumped. He smiled and said, Your master doesn't really agree to it. He must be too unwilling to let you go. But it's fine. I will slowly discuss it with your master. There's no need for you to worry. Not worrying would truly be strange. The head general, he probably did not know just how ugly his forced smile was. Yu Fu knew at heart that the contents must not have been very good, thus she decided to give up. All right then, I will listen to head general and master's arrangements. Master has a strange temperament. If he said anything too crude, please do not pay it any mind. This was not just strange, and it was not just crude. Rather than directly insult Gu Huaijiang, he had his disciple send an insulting reply. This made it very evident just how much he doted on Yu Fu and how unwilling he was to have this disciple marry someone in the future. In truth, if this had been Gu Huaijiang, he would also be unwilling to have Yu Fu engaged to someone else so early. If not for Gu Shubai being his own child, how could he have been so impatient? He had no desire to share. His adopted daughter was to become his daughter-in-law, and their relationship would become a little closer. It's fine. Your master is a person aloof of this world's affairs and is a little bit strange. Let's take it slow. You are still young, so there is no real rush. After thinking this through, Gu Huaijiang's complexion returned to normal, and the two sat back down at the chessboard. Qian was still in the courtyard. Yu Fu said, Head General, I recall that Steward Qi's granddaughter was sent out to the countryside, and it has been over half a year, right? Steward Qi has worked hard, and it's about to be the new year. Should she be brought back so that they can have a family reunion? Gu Huaijiang said, In truth, I have been thinking about this for some time. Steward Qi has been with the manor for a long time, and Qi Zhou has taken on some important responsibilities. For the sake of allowing their family to enjoy being together as a family, I should allow her to return. It's just that she was sent away because she framed you, so I needed to show you some consideration too. Yu Fu smiled and said, Now that I have spoken, there's no need for Head General to worry about that. She has been exiled for such a long time, so she must have recognized her mistakes. If she is able to change, just allow her to stay after returning this time. Gu Huaijiang did not say anything about it, yet Yu Fu herself brought up her future. It could be seen that she was being genuine. He was quite moved. I wonder where you got this temperament from. Though I do not have a daughter of my own, I have seen many girls over the years. Even my elder sister's temperament is not as good as yours. Madame Su was known among the ladies for her tolerance, dignity, and courtesy. She could not compare with Yu Fu. This was truly rarely seen. Based on the reply from Immortal's Valley, the deity of medicine, Sun Qi, did not have such a temperament. Reading between the lines, the words, "dream on," were filled with anger. Gu Huaijiang was able to hear his angry curses through the paper. He could teach Yu Fu about medicine and poison, but he could not cultivate such a tolerant temperament. Yu Fu did not sing her own praises. Madame Su isn't narrow-minded. She just had some misunderstandings about me at the beginning. I'm living in this manner, eating well, and have clothing to wear. What is there for me to fuss over? The only thing that she wanted to fuss over was Gu Shubai. Aside from herself, he was not allowed to like anyone else. Gu Huaijiang burst out laughing. I understand. Narrow-mindedness is a result of life not going well. Those whose lives are going smoothly will naturally be more broad-minded. He wanted Yu Fu to continue on like this, live a life free of worry, and never become narrow-minded. The snow was falling heavily on their way back to the capital, and Gui rode his horse over to Gu Shubai's side. He looked to be very happy and had a bit of the pastry given to him by Yu Fu in his mouth. He casually extended it to Gu Shubai. Eldest brother, have a pastry. I won't eat for now. There's a mountain pass up ahead. Be careful. Gu Shubai urged his horse a few steps ahead to lead the group when a sudden rush of wind came. Careful! He shouted through the wind and snow, but before Gu Yi could react, an arrow filled with killing intent flew straight at his chest. Eldest brother, save me! Gu Yi fell to the ground, as blood spurted from the base of his neck, dyeing red a patch of snow. The half-eaten pastry also rolled to the ground and was also dyed red. Eldest brother, save me! Fifth brother, save me! Gu Yi, I came to save you. Fifth brother came to save you. Gu Xiang shouted loudly and reached out to Gu Yi, but he was unable to reach him. Gu Yi! Gu Yi! Gu Xiang, wake up! Having been slapped a couple times in the face, Gu Xiang suddenly sat up and found that he had been dreaming, and Gu Wenqing had been sitting next to the bed while holding up a light. Gu Xiang wiped away some sweat but had not yet fully recovered from the fright. Fourth brother, why are you here? Gu Wenqing put the light next to the bed. I noticed that the weather was quite good tonight and came out for a walk. When passing by your courtyard, I heard you shouting quite loudly. Your personal servant sleeps a little too soundly. I could hear it from outside the courtyard, yet he could not hear it from inside. Speak of the devil, the personal servant was called Little Mutu. He was around 15 or 16 years of age, and he tiptoed inside with a cloak on his back. He entered with a cup of tea and said in embarrassment, in the past, it was the sixth young sir who had trouble sleeping. Now that the sixth young sir has gone to Jinling, I slacked off a little. Fourth young sir, please don't tell Steward Qi. I won't do it again. He had initially heard the sounds and planned to come over, but he also saw Gu Wenqing come in from outside the courtyard, thus he went to go and pour tea first. Gu Wenqing saw the cup of tea and no longer placed any blame on him. Little Mutu, you're the only one who would slack off. But it is strange. Your fifth young sir usually never has nightmares. After drinking some tea, Gu Xiang had calmed down a little and furrowed his brow. I also have no idea what happened, as I've had a hard time sleeping recently. Just now, I dreamed of Gu-yi and eldest brother. Gu-yi had his throat cut and fell to the snowy ground. The blood dyed a large area red. Gu-wenching covered his mouth. It's just a dream. It's almost the new year, so don't say such inauspicious things. Gu-xiang said, "Fourth brother, what day is it now?" Xiao Mutu rushed to reply, "Fifth young sir has been a little muddled lately. It's already the 20th. When the sun comes up, it will be the 21st. 21st. Then would it not be the new year in just 9 days? Fourth brother, don't you feel that something is off? Normally speaking, eldest brother and his group should have returned a few days ago. Even if the wind and snow slow them down, they should have returned by now." Gu-wenching nodded. "When I went to pay respects to father yesterday, I faintly heard father and steward chatting. He said that it had been 7 or 8 days since the last letter from eldest brother." Gu-xiang urgently said, "Eldest brother has always handled things reliably. Whenever he went out, he would send a letter every few days to let people at home feel at ease. How could he possibly have gone 7 or 8 days without sending home a letter?" He lifted his blanket and grabbed a piece of outerwear from the foot of his bed, then put it on. "Fourth brother, I keep having a bad feeling. I feel like something definitely happened to eldest brother's group. Gu-yi and I have always had a sense of telepathy. When he stuck out his butt, I knew if he needed to shit or fart. I could not possibly dream that he died for no reason." Gu-wenching grabbed his arms. "What are you going to do right now? Tell father. If it was just your imagination running wild, how could waking father up in the middle of the night be good? Fourth brother, trust me. I am willing to make a military pledge to you that something definitely happened to Gu-yi. Trust me." The people in Marquis Gu's manor would not mention a military pledge lightly. If he said it like this, he must have some grasp on the situation. Gu-wenching changed his grip and pulled him toward the door. "Let's go and tell father, quickly." Hey, fourth brother, I still haven't put on my shoes." A bit of light illuminated the main room. Both Qian and Qizhou were in attendance, but nobody knew what had happened. They just knew that Gu-wenching and Gu-xiang had come running over in the middle of the night to look for Gu-huaijiang, thus something must have happened. How could the people in the manor continue to sleep? When Gu-zhou heard this news, he immediately headed towards the main room. "Father." He cupped his hands in a salute. Noticing that Gu-huaijiang had ordered for the tea to be made extra hot, he took a sip and slightly furrowed his brow. He then turned to Gu-wenching. "What exactly happened?" Gu-xiang rushed to answer. "Second brother, something happened to eldest brother and Gu-yi. I can guarantee that something definitely happened to them. Father, quickly dispatch soldiers to look for eldest brother and them, or it will be too late." Gu-wenching added, "Father, eldest brother and sixth brother have been gone for over 10 days. It's possible that they truly have run into something dangerous. When they left, they brought along 40 people. Son wishes to take a group of troops to go and meet up with eldest brother." Gu-huaijiang was frowning the entire time and did not react much to what was being said. It seemed as though something happening was within his expectations. Gu-zhou remembered what Gu Shubai had told him before leaving and became even more certain. "Father, twins have a sense of telepathy. When Gu-yi was young and got into fights with other children from the extended family, Gu-xiang would always be able to tell. His feeling right now is also definitely going to be right." Gu-huaijiang turned his head to look at him. "Then you're saying that Gu-yi really did die?" "What? You dreamed that Gu-yi died?" Gu-zhou had arrived a bit later and did not hear about the contents of Gu-xiang's dream. He had actually just said that Gu-xiang's feeling would definitely not be wrong. When Gu-huaijiang heard this, just how heartbroken must he have felt? Father, Gui definitely will not die. I will immediately lead some troops to go and receive them. If I set out overnight, I will definitely be able to catch up to them. Gu Huaijiang nodded. All right, bring along 500 troops with you. Bring along Marquis Gu's Manor's golden decree and set out at sunrise. Wenqing, you take care of things in the manor for your second brother. Gu Wenqing knew that his martial arts ability paled when compared to his older brothers, thus did not argue. Yes, father. It's just that dispatching 500 troops out of the city is no small matter. Should we report it to the Board of War? Gu Jiugu exchanged a look with him, as both had looks of surprise in their eyes. As the top general, Gu Huaijiang had always been reluctant to use his powers lightly. When he made use of 40 to escort Madame Su's group back to Jinling, that was the most that he had ever used. This time, he told Gu Jiugu to bring 500 troops, and everyone in the city would know come morning. This was not the way that Gu Huaijiang usually did things. According to Eastern Ling's laws, mobilizing 500 or more troops requires approval from the Board of War. But waiting to report to them when the sun comes up tomorrow, the travel will cause some delays. Take my golden decree with you and lead the troops out of the city. I will take care of reporting the matter. With him having said this much, there was nothing else for Gu Jiugu to worry about. Yes, Sun will go and select the soldiers immediately. Second brother, please wait. Yu Fu suddenly walked in from the outside and saluted Gu Huaijiang. Head general, I want to go with second brother. Yu Fu and Gu Shubai shared profound feelings, and she had always been playing with Gu Yi. It was natural that she would be worried. But she had always had a sense of her limits. How could she be so willful at a time like this? Gu Wenqing said, Yu Fu, this will definitely be a difficult journey for second brother. You are a girl. How could you endure the cold wind and snow? If there really is danger, you won't have the ability to protect yourself and will become a burden for second brother. Even he and Gu Xiang did not dare bring up wanting to go along, much less someone who did not know martial arts like Yu Fu. Yu Fu revealed 2 silver needles from the palm of her hand. They were a bit different from the usual needles that she used. The tips were not slightly cyan but were blood red. These had been pulled out of a body. Yanzheng is in the western wing, and these poison needles were pulled from his body. The entire group has been overwhelmed in the mountain forest north of Changzhou. It had previously just been a bad feeling that Gu Xiang had had, but now they had physical evidence. Yanzheng. He went to Jinling with eldest brother. Why did he return alone? Yu Fu said, on my way to the main room, I saw the gatekeepers carrying Yanzheng in, and he had these sorts of poison needles stuck in his neck. I could only have them carry him back to the western wing to be treated. He rode around the clock to deliver his message. He said that when he left, eldest brother's group was still alive. Her voice became a little choked. Just how hopeless was the situation that they could only be described as still alive. Their lives were hanging by a thread, and they were in imminent danger. Gu Xiang said, what exactly happened? I need to personally go and ask him. Yu Fu grabbed a hold of him. Don't. He has already passed out and will not wake up for at least 3 days. I left the medicine to treat him with Yaolan, and she will feed it to him every day. Right now, the most pressing matter is to quickly head to Changzhou to look for them. Bring me along. Only now did they understand that Yu Fu wanting to go was not out of willfulness. Rather, it was because she had no other choice. The enemy had used poison in their attack against Gu Shubai, which resulted in the entire group being overwhelmed. Right now, only Yu Fu's poison abilities would be able to save Gu Shubai's group. Father. Gu Jiugu looked toward him, knowing that he would definitely be unwilling to put Yu Fu in danger, but reality did not wait. Head General, it's not like I don't know any martial arts. Third brother taught me a bit before. I can protect myself. If I don't go, what will happen if eldest brother and sixth brother are poisoned? She lifted the bloody poison needle. This poison is really fierce. Even I don't know the name of it, but it's fortunate that it can be treated based on the body's reaction. If I was not here, I fear that there is not another person in Eastern Ling who could treat that poison. In other words, without her, Gu Shubai and the others were guaranteed to be dead. Alright, you go with Jiogu. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, and Gu Jiogu quickly cupped his hands in a salute. Sun will immediately go and pick out some troops. Yu Fu, quickly go and prepare your medicine kit. Yes. Watching the two quickly leave, Gu Wenqing and Gu Xiang could only stand around and feel anxious. But they knew that they were not the ones feeling the most miserable. It was Gu Huaijiang. He did not know if two of his sons were alive or dead, and another son and daughter would be rushing there to provide assistance. Gu Jiogu was fine, but Yu Fu was too young and had a frail body. Just falling into the river during spring was enough to make her fall ill, much less such cold conditions with heavy snow and strong winds. He closed his eyes and began thinking. He closed his mouth and did not speak. After a long time passed. You guys also go and take a look. If you can help with something, especially over in the Western Wing. It looked like he resolutely agreed to Yu Fu's request, but he still could not overcome his fatherly feelings. He merely suppressed it in his heart and did not give it a voice. Gu Wenqing consoled him, saying, "Father, please be at ease. Second brother will definitely take good care of Yu Fu." He gave Gu Xiang a look, and the two quietly exited the room. Gu Huaijiang was left alone inside the room. Looking out through the doorway, the sky was dark. It was the darkest hour before dawn. They just needed to wait until dawn. The dawn light was still bleary atop the high city walls of the capital. Armored soldiers stood guard up there. Suddenly hearing the sound of horses' hooves roaring like thunder, cavalry could be seen coming down the road. There were so many that it was hard to tell at a glance, but nothing sounded out of place. The warhorses clad in claret armor were strong and well-fed. The soldiers riding them had their backs straight and were very alert. Such elite troops were rarely seen in the capital, and only. The man leading the troops was young and handsome, and there was a young girl seated in front of him on the horse. There was a thick cloak wrapped around her, not letting the slightest bit of wind get in and hiding her face. The young man rode forward on his horse and revealed a golden token in his hand. The city guards looked at it carefully and immediately half-kneeled. "Greetings, Lord Marquis Gu." The golden decree of Marquis Gu's manor had never been brought out lightly, thus something must be happening inside the country's borders. "I am the second son of Marquis Gu's manor. I have been ordered to lead 500 troops on a mission outside the city. Quickly open the city gates. Quickly. Open the city gates." The general of the guards loudly shouted, and the tall city gates were pushed open by 7 or 8 guards on each side. Gu Jiogu quickly rode out first on his horse. Behind him, 500 elite soldiers followed him out in an orderly fashion. Once everyone had departed, a deputy guard asked, "General, mobilizing over 500 troops requires approval from the Board of War. Why did you not ask the second young sir if they had the approval from the Board of War?" The general watched the horses ride off. "If there was an approval from the Board of War, how could I not have been informed of something as large as 500 troops leaving the city?" "You mean to say that there was no approval?" Then, the general looked at him. "So what if there was no approval? That is a first-rank general and a marquis." Once he brought out Marquis Gu's golden decree, not to mention mobilizing 500 troops, but even if it was 5,000 or 50,000, nobody could stop him. At the crack of dawn, the carriage from Marquis Gu's manor had already been waiting outside the entrance to the palace for quite some time. The palace gates were opened, and General of the Imperial Guards, Meng Fei, personally came over to the carriage, cupping his hands in apology. "Lord Marquis Gu, I am truly sorry. According to law, the palace's gates had to remain closed until this time. I've troubled you by keeping you waiting for such a long time." Gu Huaijiang stepped out of the carriage. It couldn't be helped. The palace's rules cannot be ignored. It was this marquis who came too early. It's unrelated to Lord Meng. Meng Fei became even more courteous. This lowly official has said too much. Lord Marquis must have some urgent matters and came to see His Majesty personally. This Majesty previously said that if Lord Marquis Gu came to look for His Majesty, there is no need to observe the rules about the opening time of the palace gates. Lord Meng has said this before, and this Marquis has explained it to Lord Meng before. His Majesty said this for fear of delaying information about some urgent situation during wartime. It currently is not wartime, and this Marquis cannot use that privilege lightly. After saying this, he nodded to him, and Meng Fei responded in kind, performing a respectful salute. "Take care, Lord Marquis Gu." With the snowy backdrop, his parting figure appeared very small, but it was also so mighty that it was hard to look directly at him. It snowed all night, and Lord Marquis Gu is getting old, yet he still continues to observe the rules and wait outside the palace. Not to mention waiting outside for a couple of hours, but His Majesty clearly granted him permission to enter the palace in his carriage, yet he still entered on foot. Only someone who never became arrogant from his achievements would suit the position of head general and marquis, right? A nearby subordinate said, "That's right. Lord Marquis Gu has never entered the palace in a carriage. From the moment that he arrived outside the palace, my lord has been talking about reporting it, and His Majesty would definitely open the gates for him. Yet he would not. My lord cannot be blamed for it, and His Majesty definitely would not blame my lord." "Nonsense, am I afraid of His Majesty blaming me?" Meng Fei rolled his eyes at him. "Lord Marquis Gu's noble character is something that you can only understand after another 20 years of self-reflection." Gu Huaijiang arrived outside Emperor Ning's palace and was brought to wait in a side hall by Emperor Ning's personal servant, Eunuch Gao. "Lord Marquis, please wait. His Majesty only just woke and is getting changed." He personally brought up the tea, and Gu Huaijiang received it with both hands. "I've troubled Eunuch Gao." It was this Marquis who came too early and disturbed His Majesty's rest. His Majesty has not been sleeping as well as in the past, yet it was disturbed by me. It's because he has not been sleeping as well as before that His Majesty woke up early. He was not woken by Lord Marquis. The sound of the bead curtain came from the back, and Gu Huaijiang stood up from his seat. Emperor Ning quickly walked over. "Huaijiang, what happened? We heard that you have been waiting outside the palace gates for 2 hours. What urgent matter would have you so anxious?" Gu Huaijiang flicked his sleeves and partially kneeled. Not even Emperor Ning could get him to stand up. This subject selected 500 soldiers to leave the city for Changzhou. "My son, Shubai, was attacked in Changzhou, and his situation is unclear. Only one of my subordinates was able to escape. Because of the urgent situation, there was no time to inform the Board of War, and this subject had my second son, Zhougu, leave the city with my golden decree." Emperor Ning opened his mouth. "When did this happen?" "It happened overnight before the sun came up." Emperor Ning anxious said, "We are not asking about that. We are talking about Shubai. When did it happen?" "We heard that he and Gu Yi went to escort Madame Gu and the related young miss back to Jinling. How could he suddenly have been attacked when everything was fine? Who would dare to do this?" Gu Huaijiang was being personally helped up by Emperor Ning, thus could do nothing but stand up. Based on what the soldier who had escaped, Yan Zheng, said, on their way back, all 40 of the troops led by Shubai were struck by poison needles in a forest north of Changzhou. He charged out of the encirclement and rushed back to request support. After arriving at Marquis Gu's manor, he quickly passed out. It was fortunate that Yu Fu was there to save him. Such an urgent matter, why did you not tell us sooner? Jiugu has already left. We will send some imperial physicians to go after them. What will they do if they are struck by poison needles? There's no need, Your Majesty. Yu Fu has gone with Jiugu. The group left the capital in haste and rode without rest. There was no end to the snow or wind, as they felt like knives on their faces. Even Gu Jiugu's face looked like it had been frozen. Aside from occasionally asking Yu Fu if she was cold, he did not do anything else. Naturally, Yu Fu was not cold. Before setting out, Auntie Li and the maidservants wrapped her up in thick layers. In the end, a large fox fur cloak was added on top. She looked as if she had been wrapped up in a large ball, and she just hoped that she would not roll off of Gu Jiugu's horse. If she did roll onto the ground, she might not even be able to stop. Are you hungry? Gu Jiugu's voice came from above her head, and Yu Fu gave a muffled reply. With so many layers, it became hard to hear her clearly. She did her best to reach up and remove the cloak covering her face. Her warm little face was exposed, as she exhaled, creating a large white fog. I'm not hungry and can continue. It was truly too stuffy under the cloak. If she waited any longer to expose her face, she would die from the heat before she died from the cold. When the mobilized troops arrived outside Suzhou City, the sky was dark, and Gu Jiugu pulled his horse to a stop. There's no moon out tonight. Traveling overnight in the snow with troops is not safe. It would be best to stop and rest here for now. When the clouds part, we can continue on our way. The group had traveled at a lightning-quick pace. While he had been worried about Gu Shubai and Gu Yi, he was also worried that something might happen to his own group. Fortunately, these 500 were well trained, and they had even more experience with traveling long distances than he did. On the way to Suzhou, nothing had gone wrong. Only Gu Jiugu personally helped Yu Fu down from the horse. You must be tired, right? Does anything hurt? Since you don't know how to ride a horse, with the horse keeping up such a high pace, you must be sore all over. Yu Fu leaped to the ground and brought down her medicine kit first. She then began to examine its contents. Along the way, she had been hearing some clinking sounds, and she had been worried that the bottles of medicine inside would shatter. Luckily, they were all fine. I'm fine. As long as these bottles of medicine aren't broken, it's fine. In truth, her limbs hurt so much that they were feeling numb. When she reached out to examine the bottles, her hands were slightly trembling, and Gu Jiugu had seen it. Since she herself was unwilling to admit it, he would not expose her. Quickly, sit down and eat some dried rations. The soldiers quickly and nimbly started some fires, melting the snow to water. They just ate the ratios with some hot water. They were too hard to bite through, thus they were soaked in the hot water then stuffed whole into their mouths. The form was inelegant, but there was nothing that could be done about it at present. Yu Fu copied them, breaking the rations into smaller portions and tossing them into her mouth. It was like sucking on a rock, and she hastily brought the hot water to her mouth. Gu Jiugu quickly snatched it away, the water just finished boiling. Are you not afraid of burning your mouth? You're so cold that your hands have lost all sense of feeling. You couldn't even tell how hot the water was. He handed his wineskin over to Yu Fu. Here, this wine is warm. Your entire body will feel warm after drinking it. Wine. Yu Fu hesitated for a moment. She had never drank wine before. Master said that young children can't drink wine. I'll wait for the water to cool down a little before drinking it. He was talking about the pampered little child growing up in Immortals Valley, not the Yu-Fu who is riding with a group of soldiers overnight. If you don't drink it, you will definitely freeze overnight. Out in the wilderness, the snow continued to fall and cold wind continued to blow. This sort of cold could not be blocked by any number of furs. She would need to warm up from the inside. Yu-Fu looked behind her. The soldiers were also passing around wineskins. One person had their head tilted back and poured a bit into his mouth. The Gu family's military had a rule that the military should not drink unless celebrating a victory. Today, everyone had broken this rule. It could be seen that Gu Jioga's words were not an exaggeration. They were the truth. Yu-Fu bit her lip, then snatched the wineskin from his hand. Throwing her head back, she downed a large mouthful. Cough! It was so spicy that tears began to well up in her eyes. All of the soldiers looked in her direction, revealing gratified smiles. Gu Jiogu quickly handed her a bowl of water with one hand and patted her back with the other. It will get better soon. It will get better soon. The stronger the alcohol, the more it warms the body. Yu-Fu gulped down the water, but her throat was still stinging from the spiciness. Second brother, my voice. Oh no, from the time that she was a child, she had never had such strong wine, thus her tender throat had become hoarse from the spiciness. Gu Jiogu slightly lifted an eyebrow and held her hand. Finally, she stopped shivering. Have you eaten enough? After you've eaten your fill, put your clothes back on. Don't get cold. Out in the wilderness, there was no cover. He could only have Yu-Fu lean against a large rock to block some of the wind. He then covered her in a cloak and hid her under him. Having been wrapped up tightly, only Yu-Fu's little face was exposed. Her face was red, as the wine from earlier had begun to warm her up. When she woke, the sky was clear, and she was already on the horse. Second brother, where are we? We will be arriving at Changzhou very soon. Gu Jiogu looked down at her with a smile. You got drunk and never woke up the entire time. This was my first time seeing someone sleep so soundly while riding a horse. It seems that the wine was not wasted. Yu-Fu shook her head and removed the hood of her cloak to try and wake up a little from the cold wind. We were able to reach Changzhou in just one day and one night, so fast. Eldest brother and the others must still be waiting for us. We will definitely be able to find them. As she said this, she pulled out a small brocade box and carefully opened it. What is this? Gu Jiogu lowered his head to look down and immediately tightened his grip on the reins. Inside the brocade box was a small silk cocoon. It looked like a silkworm cocoon, but its body was red. It's a Gu butterfly, one that has not yet hatched. If it can hatch, it will be able to smell the poison, and we will be able to quickly find eldest brother's group. Yu-Fu's brow furrowed. Placing a finger in her mouth, she bit down. A bead of blood immediately appeared on her snow-white skin. She squeezed the drop of blood onto the cocoon, and the red cocoon became darker and darker until it eventually became transparent. Gu Jiogu reached a hand over but was immediately slapped away by Yu-Fu. Don't touch it. It's poisonous. Just as she said this, a rustling came from inside the cocoon, as a fiery red butterfly emerged and flew from the box. It fluttered above Yu-Fu's head for a moment then continued to fly forward. Yu-Fu hastily said, "We need to follow it. We will be able to find eldest brother's group." The small butterfly flew extremely fast. Gu Jioga's group had to push their horses to ride as fast as possible to barely keep up. When they were about to enter Changzhou's borders, it did not fly north of the city like Yan Jing had said. Instead, it passed around Changzhou city and went below a cliff. Gu Jiogu had been urging his horse this entire time while calculating the location. This butterfly is taking us toward a shortcut. Above this cliff should be the northern forest that Yan Zheng had spoken of. Everyone looked up upon hearing this. Above, there was a large forest, thus it was indeed possible. Look! Yu Fu stood up on the horse and pointed into the distance. The butterfly had begun circling a creek where the ice had melted. Everyone rushed forward. The ground was covered in corpses that were all wearing the same uniforms as them. They were soldiers from the Gu family's army, and all of the bodies had poison needles sticking out of them. There were also many wounds of all sizes. Before they died, they must have gone through a brutal battle. The young general and the 6th young sir are not among them. There are only 35 corpses. Aside from Yan Jing, there were another 4 soldiers who escaped. Gu Jiugu looked up toward the top of the cliff. It might not be that they escaped. They might be sheltered somewhere at the top of the cliff. We will split into 2 groups. One will search the top of the cliff, and the other will search the bottom of the cliff. Yu Fu said, "No, eldest brother and the others were also struck by the poison needles. They are definitely at the bottom of the cliff, otherwise, the butterfly would not have continued circling down here. It's not just eldest brother and his group. I'm guessing that the attackers are also at the bottom of the cliff, and they're looking for them. The attackers would also have the smell of poison on them." Everyone instantly became fierce, as they all understood the meaning behind Yu Fu's words. They absolutely had to find Gu Shubai's group before the assassins, or it would be too late. The 500 troops split into 4 groups and went in separate directions to look for traces of Gu Shubai. Yu Fu stayed close to Gu Jiugu. She tightly hugged her medicine kit, while she wore a solemn expression. The forest below the cliff was even denser than the forest at the top. Where would Gu Shubai and his group be? Those assassins should have been searching for them for quite some time. Could they have found them already? The fiery red butterfly fluttered through the trees and would occasionally lead them backward. One soldier said, "Second young sir, young Miss Yu Fu, is this butterfly okay or not?" Yu Fu was just as anxious. Its circling around means that the smell of poison has been spread all around the forest. The places that we've gone are likely where eldest brother's group has been. It's also possible that it was where the assassins were, and it is smelling the poison fumes that they left behind. Everyone looked around. Unfortunately, the snow from last night had already melted, and there were no footprints to be seen. Gu Jiugu looked everywhere when he noticed a glint of silver from the corner of his eyes. It was a very familiar glint. He turned his head to look more carefully, then pointed at a tree. "Yu Fu, isn't this the poison needle that you found stuck in Yanjing?" "This is it." Yu Fu came forward to try and pull the silver needle out, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not pull it out. Gu Jiugu used a corner of his sleeve to cover his hand and pulled it out. This needle had been stuck so deep that it did not look like it had been thrown casually, nor had it been stuck in there accidentally. Yu Fu suddenly thought of something. This was left here by eldest brother. This is definitely a sign for us. Aside from eldest brother, who else would have the inner strength to have the needle pierce so far into the tree trunk? When Gu Shubai had taught Yu Fu the flying needle for the first time, he had done it on the martial arts training ground, and Gu Jiugu had personally seen it. The head of the needle was pointing further into the valley below the cliff. Gu Jiugu waved to the people behind him, "Let's go." After the butterfly got deeper into the forest, it became more and more precise, leading the group to a cave. It circled around near the cave for a while, and just as everyone was about to enter, they heard a strange sound come from the forest. It was definitely not the sound of the wind blowing through the trees. "Yu Fu, go with the butterfly into the cave to take a look. Leave this place to us." Yu Fu hastily said, "Be careful of poison needles." Regardless of what sort of people the assassins in this forest were, the 500 troops from the Gu family army would kill whatever it met. After saying this, she ran toward the cave. Inside the pitch-black cave, the sound of her footsteps echoed. "Eldest brother, are you guys here? It's you Fu." At this moment, the assassins should be fighting with Gu Jioga's group outside the cave, thus the group inside would have to be Gu Shubai's. She just hoped that they were still alive and that the poison had not completely filled their veins. However, the only reply that she received was her own echo. After a long moment, a faint voice came from the darkness, and Yu Fu subconsciously took a step back before seeing a dark figure rush toward her. Where did this assassin come from, even pretending to be our Yu Fu? Thump. Yu Fu was knocked to the ground by that dark figure, and she grimaced from the pain. He could still fly, which made it clear that he had not been poisoned. Cough, cough. "Sixth brother, it's me. I'm really Yu Fu." In the inky darkness of the cave, Yu Fu could hear that it was Gu Yi's voice, but Gu Yi could not tell that it was Yu Fu's voice. Her throat had become a little hoarse from the wine and had not yet recovered. Her voice was completely different from usual. Now that Gu Yi was in a state of extreme nervousness, he was even more incapable of telling that it was her. He froze and only climbed off of Yu Fu after a long pause. "You're really little Yu Fu." In the darkness, his hands felt around Yu Fu's face and only let go after a long time had passed. "You really are beautiful." "Sure enough, it is our little Yu Fu. Why is your voice different?" A light suddenly illuminated the inside of the cave. Gu Shubai held a torch in one hand and weakly held his chest with the other. "Yu Fu, you saw Yanjing." Yu Fu went over to support him. "I saw him. He's still alive." Second brother is leading a group of 500 cavalrymen outside the cave. "Sixth brother, hold the torch. I will treat eldest brother's poison." Gu Shubai's complexion was not good. It was immediately clear that the poison had begun to spread. Yes. The inside of the cave was dark, but Yu Fu's technique was practiced and exquisite, and she quickly suppressed the poison. She handed over the medicine to treat the poison that she had brought along to Gu Shubai. "It's fortunate that eldest brother has great martial ability and immense inner energy, which did not allow the poison to spread too quickly. But you must keep in mind that you currently cannot use your inner energy. The poison must be completely cleansed first, and that will need at least 10 days. Gu Yi said, "Eldest brother blocked a poison needle for me at a critical moment, or that needle would have hit my throat, and I fear I would have been dead long ago. If not for this, eldest brother would not be so poisoned that he could not move. We've been hiding in this cave for 2 days and knew that someone would find us today." He had thought that it was an assassin and never thought that Yu Fu's group would arrive so soon. Gu Shubai weakly smiled. "You must be exhausted from the journey through the wind and snow, right? Is your voice a result of the cold?" When Yu Fu had entered, he could tell that they were her footsteps. Unfortunately, he was too weak and could not stop Gu Yi from rushing forward. Yu Fu cleared her throat. "It's not from the cold. It was second brother who gave me some wine, and the spice did it." Gu Shubai's eyes flickered for a moment then quickly returned to normal. It was only now that they noticed the sound of fighting coming from outside the cave, swords clashing. This is bad. Though second brother has many people, the enemy has many poison needles. I'm going out to help second brother. Gu Yi said this and began to run out but was stopped by Yu Fu, who grabbed a corner of his clothes. "You take care of eldest brother here. I'll go." This poison can be said to be unmatched in Eastern Ling. Unfortunately, I think nothing of it. To poison the people at my side, I will have them see who is more poisonous. Yu Fu spat out these vicious words then turned around and walked toward the entrance of the cave. With her sudden outburst, Gu forgot to stop her. Gu Shubai leaned against the wall of the cave, using the faint glow from the torch to watch Yu Fu gradually get further and further away. The small young girl's back was straight, and her shadow was stretched long by the flame. Her manner was as imposing as the lofty clouds above the mountain peaks or as tall as the pines on a mountain peak. It made people look up to her. Gu Shubai was momentarily stunned. Gu, do you get the feeling that Yu Fu grew a lot taller? Outside the cave, the assassins and soldiers were clustered together in a fight. Their swords looked a little green, which made it clear that they had been coated in poison. While the members of the Gu family army outnumbered the enemy, they were fighting with a handicap and could not gain an advantage. What Gu had said was true. Not only did they have poison needles, but they also were not few in numbers. Yu Fu slightly squinted her eyes and thought back to what Gu Shubai had said when teaching her the flying needle technique. She needed to be calm and exert a special amount of force on her wrist. She had trained repeatedly in the Western Wings corridor, and was it not all for the sake of today? For the sake of protecting the people that she wished to protect. With a flick of her wrist, poison needles flew up from between fingers, and 4 assassins instantly fell. Those assassins never reacted, as another 4 needles flew out from Yu Fu's other hand. Those who were struck also fell. What sort of poison could make a person die just from contact? Their gazes when they looked toward Yu Fu were as if they were looking at a god of death, full of fear. It was only now that the soldiers of the Gu family army remembered that they had an immortal practitioner of poison on their side. What need was there for them to fear the poison on their enemy's blade? If they got poisoned, Yu Fu would treat it. In an instant, the army's morale was greatly improved. The brave soldiers on the battlefield were well trained, and they quickly surrounded the assassins before slowly tightening the encirclement. The assassins had already expended all of their energy. Knowing that they could no longer continue the fight, some leaped and flew straight at Yu Fu. Whoosh! The poison needles flew out from between her fingers, and the assassins flying at her widened their eyes, as they dropped from the sky like birds. Gu Jiogut saw her nearby. Did you see eldest brother? They're still alive. As long as they were alive, there were no poisons that Yu Fu could not treat. Gu Jioga's confidence instantly skyrocketed, as all of the exhaustion from the hasty travel vanished. He then gave the order, leave one of them alive. Kill the rest. He had already noticed that the poison needles that Yu Fu used this time were completely different from the one that she had used on Qi Ting. The assassins who had been struck by these needles did not even get a chance to breathe before dying from the poison. It could be seen just how toxic they were. It seemed that Yu Fu was really angry this time. Gu Shubai's group was brought to the nearby Changzhou city where they settled down in a local official's manner. The poison that had been in his body was treated by Yu Fu, but it was not something that would be resolved in just a single night. During the recovery process, he must not exert himself. The prefect of Changzhou, Quan Jiyan, had already allowed the servants to return home. He was also preparing to return to his private home to celebrate the new year when he suddenly heard the news that someone had led 500 cavalrymen into the city under Marquis Gu's golden decree, which caused him to hastily go out and receive them in fear. Upon hearing that Gu Shubai's group had been attacked, he trembled with anger. That damn group of assassins, why did they have to try and kill members of Marquis Gu's manor in an area under his jurisdiction? Who was out there that did not know that His Majesty favored Marquis Gu's manor? With such a big case happening, it would be hard for him, as the prefect of Changzhou, to escape responsibility for this. These sorts of savage bandits. They actually dared to commit murder in my Changzhou's borders, and their target was the heir to Marquis Gu. This lowly official will definitely investigating those bandits to get revenge for the young sir. It's revenge for the innocent soldiers who died. My eldest brother is still alive and well. But since Lord Prefect has the heart to do it, send people to the bottom of the cliff to gather the corpses. Also, during this time, there's no need to allow outsiders to enter or exit this manor. Quan Ji Yen repeatedly agreed, yes, 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 it's time for the new year. The manor had already stopped official work. If second young sir has any other needs, just tell this lowly official, and this lowly official will definitely do everything possible to accommodate your request. Quan Ji Yen had merely said it out of courtesy, but who knew that Gu Jiugu would really make a special request? Have 2 of your loyal maidservants come and serve. Ha! Maidservants. With such a large group of old guys, having 2 maidservants come to serve, would it not be like sending lambs into a den of lions? Gu Jiugu slightly furrowed his brow and knew that he was thinking along the wrong lines. My younger sister set out in a hurry and did not bring any maidservants to serve. The army is composed solely of men and cannot provide adequate service, thus I am asking you to bring 2 maidservants in. Quan Ji Yen let out a sigh of relief and fawningly smiled, so that was the case. Second young sir, do not worry. This lowly official will go and take care of this immediately. Gu Jiugu watched his parting figure in displeasure before turning around and walking back into the manor. The poison in eldest brother's body is slowly dissipating, but the poison penetrated too deep. I fear that he will not be able to move for a few more days. I fear that it will be impossible for us to return to the manor to celebrate this new year. Gu Shubai lay in bed, and his complexion was already far better than it was when they were in the cave. Gu Yi could not hear the tone of regret in Yu Fu's voice and stupidly said, celebrating the new year outside is quite nice. Even at my age, I have never celebrated it away from home. Moreover, I'm not doing it alone. The 4 of us are together. Yu Fu glanced at him, 6th brother, you're a little too heartless. You have no idea how worried the head general is about you, and he hasn't personally seen eldest brother alive. He definitely won't be able to enjoy a happy New Year's celebration. It was only now that Gu Yi realized what she was worried about and immediately became dejected. That's right. Gu Xiang didn't see me for a few days and started having nightmares, even dreaming something as inauspicious as me dying. Without me there to celebrate the new year with him, he will definitely be extremely heartbroken. Ha! He actually threw in a chuckle. It was rare that Yu Fu would spout nonsense with him. As she glanced outside, where's second brother? Wasn't one of the assassins kept alive? Second brother went to interrogate that assassin. I heard that he's quite hard-headed and refuses to speak no matter what. As I see it, those assassins are definitely from Western Kuan. Gu Shubai lay in bed with his eyes closed, and nobody could tell if he was asleep or just resting with his eyes closed. Yu Fu said, why do you say they're from Western Kuan? Gu Yi had already forgotten that there was a possibility that Yu Fu was a princess of Western Kuan. Think about it. If it's not Western Kuan who hates our Marquis Gu's manor the most, who could it be? Year after year, Western Kuan invades our eastern Ling, and it's fortunate that the Gu family's army is stationed at the border to stand guard, pushing them back time and time again. If eldest brother and I died, Marquis Gu's manor would definitely have suffered a huge blow. Of course, the most important one would be eldest brother. He rubbed his nose, adding that last part. Gu Shubai was the heir to Marquis Gu's manor and was the one who would eventually inherit the position of Marquis. They must not be careless. Yu Fu said, the special envoy from Western Kuan should have left before the end of the year but stayed in Eastern Ling for no reason. I also find that very strange. I initially thought that it was Kuan Wushang who intended to steal military secrets from the manor, but going with what you said, I think it's just Kuan Wushang who wants to kill eldest brother. He's envious of eldest brother's engagement to you. Additionally, he's also a disciple of Immortals Valley and your junior disciple. These poison needles were definitely his work. That's not the case. Gu Shubai had opened his eyes at some point and refuted Gu Yi's argument. Kun Wushang grew up with Yu Fu. He should be someone who understands Yu Fu's abilities very well and know that she can deal with this sort of poison very easily. If I was him, I would definitely use a more exotic poison. Yu Fu, what do you think? Yu Fu nodded. I was thinking the same as eldest brother. Kun Wushang is a prince of Western Kun, thus there are people paying attention to every move that he makes in the capital. If he had such a grand plan in place, why is it that we didn't notice anything? On the contrary, I feel that someone knows that he is my junior disciple and deliberately used poison needles to focus our attention on him. This sort of explanation was more coherent, and Gu Yi became pensive but felt that this matter was confusing. Someone wants to kill eldest brother and me, and they want to pass the blame on to Kun Wushang. Then it shouldn't be someone from Western Kun. Rather, it would be someone from court in the capital. The members of the court in the capital had always been dissatisfied with Marquis Gu's manner. Even with such a large number of people, it felt like the answer was about to reveal itself. Gu Shubai closed his eyes. Before the truth is uncovered, any suspicion is just speculation. There must not be any declaration. Then who does eldest brother suspect or think it was? Sleep here for tonight, Part 5, How's eldest brother? Gu Jiogu walked in through the door with an unhappy expression. Seeing Gu Shubai smile at him from the bed with his complexion greatly improved, he felt much more at ease. Gu Shubai said, How goes the interrogation with the survivor? He had a poison hidden in his tooth. We only employed 2 torture techniques before he could no longer endure and killed himself. He didn't reveal any useful information. This one could be considered as having been kept alive for nothing. It was no wonder his expression looked so poor when he came in. Yu Fu said in surprise, having poison hidden in a tooth is the way suicide troops work. When I was in Immortals Valley, I heard about it. That those assassins were suicide troops, it seems that the enemy has even more available than we initially thought. Gu Jiogu said, Lord Prefect has already ordered the coroner to examine the corpse. Gu Yi, what exactly happened on that day? Tell me in detail. After escorting Auntie and Yunyan back to Jinling, we stayed 1 extra day then set out for the capital the day after that. On the way there, it was very calm. On the way back, it was also fine. Who knew that when passing through Changzhou, this group would suddenly make an appearance? Thinking about it now, the enemy did not make their move while they were headed to Jinling for the sake of having them lower their guard. Then they would launch a fatal attack. Their attack from the onset was with poison needles. We lost the initiative, and the soldiers that were poisoned quickly lost the strength to fight back. During the fight, eldest brother protected me while descending down the cliff using the vines. Then had Yanjing return to report on the situation. We hid below the cliff for 2 days, and eldest brother said that we would definitely be unable to continue hiding. When he mentioned Gu Shubai, his voice was still filled with fear. At that time, the poison was circulating in Gu Shubai's body, and he could no longer fight. If they were found by the assassins, the burden of fighting them off would have fallen to him. He was absolutely terrified. It was the first time that he had ever regretted not listening to his father and brothers to train more, so when Yu Fu entered the cave, he was so nervous that he could not even recognize his little sister. Even Yu Fu felt nervous from listening to him. Eldest brother, how did you know that you would be found today? Gu Shubai smiled calmly. The area below the cliff was only so large. The assassins had searched for us for 2 days. Even if they felt that the cave was too conspicuous for us to be hiding inside, after searching everywhere else and coming up empty, they would consider this most dangerous place as the safest place. Gu Jiogu was quite frustrated with his confidence. It turned out that he knew that this cave was conspicuous. What if the assassins had chosen to search the most conspicuous places? Eldest brother really had an amazing strategy. It's fortunate that we had Yufu's poison butterfly to lead the way, otherwise, the ones to find you first today really would have been the assassins. Gu Shubai looked at him sideways. I still haven't settled my debt with you. Why did you have Yufu drink wine? Gu Yi didn't recognize Yufu's voice and nearly gave her a beating from thinking that she was an assassin. The two brothers engaged in a verbal dispute. Gu Yi and Yufu exchanged a glance, and neither dared to speak. Marquis Gu's manner was strict in its upbringing. When the elders spoke, the two youngest no longer had any right to speak. Yufu lifted her head to take a look at the two when Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu suddenly began laughing. She silently let out a sigh. The relationship between brothers was probably something that she could not understand. Right, Yufu, I had Lord Prefect prepare 2 maidservants to come and take care of you. I fear that we will need to stay in Changzhou for the new year. I have already instructed someone to return and report to father. Thinking about it, they will receive word within a few days. Maidservants. Have them take care of eldest brother. I don't need others to take care of me. Yufu tucked in a corner of Gu Shubai's blanket. When taking care of him, she looked the part. It seemed as though she had grown over the course of a single night. A breath got caught in Gu Jioga's throat. Why did he feel that Yufu's movements were like those of a sister-in-law? Gu Yi gave him a look. Second brother, let's go out first and leave Yufu to take care of eldest brother. Little Yufu, I'll go and call your maidservants over. After saying this, he dragged Gu Jiogu toward the outside, but Gu Jiogu was reluctant to leave. It was obvious that he did not want to leave. By the time that he had been dragged to the door, he suddenly remembered what he wanted to say. Yufu, your room has been arranged to be next door to eldest brother's. This will make looking after him easier. The 2 maidservants will be able to take care of you and eldest brother. What do you think of that? From the bed, Gu Shubai gave him a look that was full of annoyance. Have you finished speaking? If you have, scram. Gu Jiogu pretended not to see it. There's no need. I will be sleeping here tonight. Yufu turned to look at them, as both Gu Jiogu and Gu Yi had their mouths opened wide. They were so wide that a whole egg could be stuffed in. She wanted to sleep with eldest brother. Gu Shubai let out a quiet cough, as a faint smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. From the moment he saw Yufu in the cave to when they arrived in the manor in Changzhou, he felt that Yufu had grown up. She had grown so fast that he could not react. Looking at her now, she was still just a child, completely innocent. It was likely that she had never even thought about how men and women should not sleep together, and them being together would be improper. Gu Jiogu, Yufu, you can't, Gu Shubai, then we will do it like that. When you guys go out, close the door. I'm cold. Eldest brother, you're cold. Yufu looked at the two with a frown. The two were standing at the entrance with the door open, neither coming in nor going out. It was truly anxiety-inducing. Quickly close the door. Her voice was filled with urgency, as Gu Jioga's heart broke. Why is second brother acting so strange? Yufu muttered to herself. She felt more and more that Gu Jiogu was acting strangely. Gu Shubai said, it's nothing. He must be hungry. Then is eldest brother hungry? The kitchen sent some congee over, but it might not taste very good. Yufu looked over at the table. The food box was still there. Upon opening it, a cloud of steam rose. Aside from a pot of congee, there were some side dishes local to Changzhou and a light soup. It did not look very appetizing. It would be great if we were back home. Even if we could not eat fish while sick, there would be some minced pork that could be added to the congee. Yu Fu carefully brought the congee over and neatly placed it on a small stool next to the bed. Gu Shubai said, Changzhou Prefecture cannot be considered wealthy. In addition to this, at this time of year, every family relies on fish and meat. It's not easy to get vegetables. This is already quite good. In the army, there are times when there won't be any food to eat. He leaned over to pick up the bowl, and Yu Fu hastily took it away. You lie down. I'll feed you. As she said this, she scooped up some congee with a small spoon, brought it up to her lips, and gently blew on it. She only brought it to his mouth after the heat had dissipated. She fed him some, and Gu Shubai ate it extremely obediently. Why would you be unable to eat while in the army? Is it if the battle fights too long that the food ran out? When I was 18, Western Kun invaded the city of Yunzhou on the border. Father brought me along for the battle. That year, Eastern Ling was suffering from a drought. The harvests were poor, and there was no excess in grain to take in, thus the army did not have enough rations. By the end, we led soldiers in digging for wild herbs. We were on the verge of eating the bark off of trees. It was fortunate that we managed to defeat Western Kun's army. While he spoke, he had a completely relaxed expression. Yu Fu grimaced. While I was in Immortals Valley, Master also liked to grow vegetables to feed us. At that time, I didn't find them to taste bad. After coming to Eastern Ling and being able to eat fish and meat every day, I feel that fish and meat taste best. You always ate vegetables while in Immortals Valley. It's no wonder others said that you looked like you were 10 years old when you first came to Marquis Gu's manor. Gu Shubai reached out and gestured up to Yu Fu's shoulder. At that time, you were roughly this tall. She was in the middle of her growth period. How could she possibly grow tall if she only ate vegetables? It seemed that it was not just Gu Huaijiang who did not know how to raise a daughter. Even the dignified deity of medicine was merely at this level. Shh, you must not let Master hear that. He will definitely be very hurt. In truth, Master treats me very well. In Immortals Valley, the disciple that he dotes on the most is me. How does he do that? When I left, Master gave me a lot of silver and gold. You must think that Immortals Valley does not suffer from a lack of money, right? In truth, Master is really poor. The money that he gave me and Yao Lan was almost all of his savings. She fed him while they chatted, and the bowl of congee was quickly emptied, but Gu Shubai still wished to continue. Even if he was full, he wished to have another bowl to have Yu Fu continue feeding him. It was always he who took care of her. He had never been taken care of by her like this. This sort of feeling was wonderful, and he did not wish for it to end. Drink some tea, then you should sleep. Sleeping more will allow the poison to quickly dissipate. Sleep. When he had chased away Gu Jiugu and Gu Yi, he was quite happy. Now, he was slightly regretting it. Yu Fu was young and inexperienced. He could not bully her like this. Cough, cough. Yu Fu, where will you sleep? Yu Fu was in the middle of pouring tea and suddenly turned her head upon hearing this. Who knew what flashed through her mind, as her face suddenly turned red? She knew it. She knew why Gu Jiugu had that expression when he left the room. I will be taking care of you here. It was not because she wanted to sleep in his room. Hold on, before Gu Jiugu had left the room, she seemed to have said that she would be sleeping here. This was quite the misunderstanding. Yu Fu's face was bright red, and Gu Shubai could not stop himself from smiling. She was regretting it now, but it seemed to be too late. PFF. She loudly blew out the candles in the room, leaving only the one at the bedside. She then walked over with a stiff expression. Lifting the blanket, she completely covered Goose Shoebai. Sleep. Below the blanket, Goose Shoebai let out a muffled laugh. Yu-Fu covered herself with a large cloak and sat down next to the bed. Though the manner was simple, Quan Ji Yen provided quite a few charcoal braziers, thus the room was not cold. It was just that when Goose Shoebai went to sleep, she remained alone in the dim room and quickly began to nod off. There was a thump. Her head landed on the mattress, and the sound of slow and steady breathing rose. Goose Shoebai lifted the blanket from his head. I haven't even fallen asleep, so how come you fell asleep first? He sat up straight and covered Yu-Fu with a woolen blanket. Seeing her face get squished against the bed, he could not get enough of this sight. Rushing over all the way from Linen to Changzhou, you must be exhausted, right? If this was not the case, why else would Jiuge have let you drink wine? You've actually learned to put up a strong front. You were clearly extremely sleepy, yet you still stayed here to take care of me. In the darkness, he quietly muttered to himself while gently patting Yu-Fu's head. Her hair had already become messy. Without Lian Zhu present, who would take care of her hair? Yu-Fu shuddered. Eldest brother, eldest brother. Her breathing became erratic, but she did not wake. Goose Shoebai quietly responded, I'm right here. Her breathing gradually calmed down, as she quietly muttered, eldest brother, I'll bring you home. So she was sleep-talking. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.